The Ink and Paint Club podcast is intended for mature audiences. I know we're usually talking about kids' cartoons and stuff, but there's going to be naughty language. Anyway, listener discretion is advised.
The dog has been evicted.
Aw, but I love Scout. He's the best boy.
We already have a guest star on this episode. We don't need Scout.
Aw.
You're listening to the Ink and Paint Club podcast, your weekly home for animation reviews and discussions.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Ink and Paint Club podcast. My name is JD, and joining me are my two good friends, Kyle.
Hey.
And Matt.
Hello, hello, hello.
And this week we have a special guest. He has worked on shows that you might be familiar with, like Bojack Horseman and Tuca and Birdie, and is also the creator of web cartoon sensation Sublo and Tangy Mustard. So everybody, please welcome to the show, Aaron Long.
Hey, happy to be here.
Yeah, Aaron, we're very happy to have you here. All three of us really enjoy at least Sublo and Tangy Mustard.
Thanks a lot.
And viewers out there, if you've not seen this, please go to Aaron's YouTube page, which I will link in the show notes, and go watch this because it's a very funny web series, which we'll probably talk about in a little bit. So Aaron has had a very varied career in the animation industry, working on a number of different productions as well as his own. So we're just gonna kind of talk to you, Aaron, about like your experiences and all that. So the kind of the starter for most of our guests here that we like to ask is just like basically what got you into wanting to be an artist?
I think I basically always wanted to do art. Like even when I was like 4 or 5, I was trying to do like comics and stuff, and I always liked cartoons. I can't remember a time when I didn't want to draw comics or cartoons or something like that. It just, it kind of evolved over the years of like what kind I wanted to make. But I basically just kind of liked everything at the beginning. Like when I was little, I just watched, whatever was like on TV in the 90s. A lot of Looney Tunes, a lot of Sonic the Hedgehog, Ren and Stimpy, Animaniacs, Pinky and the Brain. I was more into the Warner Brothers stuff at that era than like the Disney stuff. Although I did also really like that Winnie the Pooh show they had, The New Adventures of Winnie the Pooh.
Oh yeah,
Sure.
I liked that a lot, but I wasn't really into like DuckTales or Tailspin or that stuff too much.
More like the really classic stuff.
Yeah.
Kyle, do you take offense over there?
Oh, it's not like I thought that stuff was bad. I just, I didn't find it as funny as like Pinky and the Brain.
No, I'm definitely in your camp.
Wasn't good.
I did like Darkwing Duck. I thought that one was pretty funny.
We're on good terms now.
So you would kind of say like kind of those like early to mid 90s cartoons are kind of like what your inspirations are. Like when you're working on like either your own projects or I guess maybe other projects, or for what inspires you and like what do you draw inspiration from?
Well, not so much the 90s stuff now. I think I'm probably more inspired by a lot of like anime. I really love Lupin the Third and like Crayon Shin-chan.
Sure.
Masaki Yuasa's stuff. I really like Simon Hanselman's Meg and Mog and Owl comics.
Oh my god.
Those are incredible.
Me and Kyle both love Meg, Mog, and Owl. It's amazing.
Awesome. Yeah, that stuff was like a huge inspiration.
Crisis Zone has been a wild ride.
Yeah, it's gotten way off the deep end. It was funny. I was just reading his new collection of just kind of like rounding up all the zines and stuff, Seeds and Stems, which is all very like normal Megan Mog and Owl stuff. And I was just like, wow, I totally forgot. Like, just this is what the comic is. Crisis Zone is like insane right now.
So as far as like, I mean, like your influences in your sort of early animation, I was kind of rereading some, or not rereading. I was reading some old interviews that you did back when you were attending the Max the Mutt College of Animation Art and Design.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and you're talking about just sort of your influences there, and you kind of mentioned you threw some names out there like Bob Clamp at Tex Avery, Chuck Jones, Buddy Works, and like
Oh
the
yeah, I
Fletcher
loved all
cartoons.
those, all that, like, all the '40s Looney Tunes and like '30s Fleischer, yeah, Ub Iwerks. Like I like a lot of weird early Rubber Hose stuff, and yeah, like '40s Looney Tunes when they were kind of at their like craziest.
Yeah, like it was definitely like once I read that, it became very clear to me because when I was reviewing your work and then like just coming across like Festive Fish and the shorts that you did for Sonic Bunny Productions, and
Oh
like it was
yeah,
just very sort of apparent that like, oh, he drew like a lot of like early inspiration from that era of animation, at least for
definitely.
those. And
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like
Especially with
this.
Fester Fish, yeah. And then, or sorry, what were you gonna say?
No, I was just going to say that it was very interesting because I started at the beginning of your YouTube channel. Like I worked from the oldest to newest, and
Oh
to
god, I'm
see
sorry
and
you
to,
witnessed that stuff.
no, well, it was very interesting to see the progression of like the quality of work and like how your style changed over time and everything. Because I feel like even once you start getting to like the Sublo and Tangy Mustard stuff, like there's still definitely that influence there. Like your stuff is very it's very sort of maybe not to the exact degree that the older stuff is like, but it's very bouncy and it's just very like it's even when characters are doing very simple things, it's like there's a lot of character in sort of the way that they move and
Oh, that's good to hear.
yeah, and express and everything. Like it's very cool.
Yeah, I'd say that stuff is still all like definitely a big influence. Like every time I see anything by like Rod Scribner or Jim Tyre or any of those kind of those animators that influenced me when I was doing like Fester Fish, I still love it and I'm still influenced by it. But I think there's also more of kind of like an angular, uh, like not like typical anime style, but like it's very specific kind of like Masaki Yuasa or like Studio 4C stuff, like Tech on Concrete. I really love that stuff that has like a lot of
Sure, sure.
perspective and depth to it, and like uh,
Yeah, and now that you
I think
mention it, yeah, I think specifically, yeah, Tech on King Creek. Like I watched it back when it came out, and it stuck with me a lot just because of how very distinct it was. And I think
yeah.
there's some shots that I recall seeing in Sublo that kind of that definitely do. Now that you mention it, like a lot of sort of like um not isometrics, not the word. What's the opposite of isometric? It's kind of
Oh,
like,
like a super wide angle, like distorted kind of
yeah,
perspective.
that type of
Yeah,
thing. Yeah,
I
and
love
it's
that stuff. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
There's a few kind of people doing that over there. There was like Masaki Yuasa and like the other people who worked with him, and they're like Shojiro Nishimi. He's another guy at Studio 4C who did the animation direction, I think, on Tech on Concrete,
Yeah.
and a few other things that kind of had similar looks. Like this short I was looking at recently from that Gotham Knight anthology. The first
Oh,
short in
yeah.
that has like it looks like Tech on Concrete basically.
Yeah, that's definitely like a really cool. I've been meaning to check out. They did a follow, or not like a direct follow, but they did like what was it, Batman Ninja, and I thought that might have been kind of related to the Gotham Knight little anthology thing that they did there.
Oh, I
Or
don't
like
know. I haven't
basically,
seen Batman Ninja. Although
I
the
think
name makes me laugh every time, just how like
yeah,
direct and
It
like blunt it
it's
is. It's like a
it's
placeholder name.
yeah,
it's a ride, man. Just like imagining the entire like Batman mythos in like feudal Japan. It's crazy.
Yeah, maybe I'll check it out. I've heard that it's pretty entertaining.
yeah. I hadn't actually checked it out myself yet, but I mean, the a lot of that DC straight to DVD stuff like is definitely very entertaining. So, but
My
anyway,
girlfriend is working on that right now. She's or not on that specific thing, but she's been working on compositing on various Warner Brothers projects.
oh
A lot
shit,
of them are like DC stuff.
awesome, awesome. I take it that you met her probably like while you were like that's always an interesting thing when I hear like people that I know in animation and like they end up with other people that also work in animation.
Yeah, we met at Shadow Machine, well, and a couple of other places too, I guess. But through the animation industry, I guess here in LA, when I was on Trip Tank, and she was doing some other stuff on Trip Tank, and then we both worked together on season 1 of BoJack, and we had like started dating at that point.
Well, that's awesome.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
she's also very she's like more capable than I am at most animation. Like she can do 3D and she does a lot of stop motion too. She's kind of done everything.
Well, I mean, you've definitely unless she assists. I mean, because in Sublo, there's definitely some 3D stuff in there, right? Unless you just kind of pulled
I
the
kind of
wool over
fake
my
it.
eyes.
It's all me just like faking like flat planes that they
Yeah.
kind of draw in perspective and like skew around to make it feel 3D.
Oh shit, you got me fooled. So congratulations.
I've seen your Instagram stories, like a recent train one. You were showing that
Oh
you
yeah.
had done it like on a plane or something.
Yeah, I just kind
That
of,
was
for
pretty
those
interesting.
train things, I would just sort of draw the planes flat, like the side of the train and then the front of the train, and then pinch them and skew them into the right angle and flash.
No, I mean, your background work is just incredibly impressive. Like I
Yes,
know
yeah.
a
Thank
lot
you.
of people,
That's
a lot of
cool to
people
hear.
just look at the characters and kind of take the background stuff for granted. But man, stuff you do in that it's incredibly impressive.
That's great
Yeah.
to hear. I was never good at backgrounds when I was doing like Festive Fish. That stuff was always kind of like an afterthought. Like it'd be like, oh, I'd have a lot of fun making the character animation all loose and wiggly and stuff, and then I'd be like, oh, I guess I better draw like a door here or whatever. But then again, I think it was really like looking at Masaki Yuasa's stuff and seeing like, oh, you can like have fun with perspective. It doesn't have to just be trying to make things as real as possible. You can kind of stylize the angles and make
Yeah,
it
for sure.
funky.
Yeah, and I felt like that was definitely something that I noticed going through your work is that you're just and I feel like definitely early on in a lot of people's sort of animation career when they start doing like their own independent animations and stuff, they have to kind of become like a jack of all trades, and they have to like they're basically the only person like working on like their work for the most part, at least like way back. I'm sure like nowadays with like the internet being as big as it is, it's easier to network with people and like, get multiple people on a project to work on multiple aspects of it. But I mean, like
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
when you're starting off doing your independent, like at least because you started uploading your stuff to YouTube in 2007.
That's like
Yeah,
early YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely early YouTube. Yeah, I was doing
So
like,
when you're
um,
doing like Space Goose and Festive Fish and everything, and like,
yeah,
or even just like the earlier stuff, like, but yeah, like not only were you doing the animation on it, but yeah, you're doing the background art, you're editing it, you're doing the
hmm
voices in it, but then you're also doing the music, which like
yeah.
yeah, no, and it's the music in Sublo is definitely one of my favorite aspects of it. Like I haven't been able to stop thinking of the main theme. Like
Oh, that's
since,
awesome.
The theme
yeah,
song.
I'm really glad
like
to hear that. I'm
I,
working. I tweeted the other day. I'm working on like putting together all the music properly and like soundtrack thing that I was going to put out with like demos and like extra different versions of things and like
awesome.
sometimes I like score a scene one way and then I listen to it and I'm like, oh, this music doesn't really get the mood that I want, so then I'll do different music. So I was going to put all that stuff together in like a thing and put it up.
Yeah, so because I noticed, I hit up your website just to see if there's any other place that I might have overlooked as far as like kind of when I was doing the research on you, and I only just found out like a couple hours ago that you have your own SoundCloud and that you upload some of the music on there, like from
Yeah, yeah.
Sublo and then some older stuff. But man, I wasn't expecting all of the DMX remixes on there.
I love DMX. Yeah, he's great. He's
I mean,
hilarious.
it's incredible. But you know what? Part of me should have expected that because you're my favorite of your non-Sublo work on your YouTube channel is DMX meets David Bowie. Like
Thank
that
you.
video is incredible, and I think a lot of people agree. It's like your most popular upload on there.
It might be my favorite of any of the stuff I've done, like even including Sublos, just because it came together so fast. I didn't have time to get sick of it like I do with if I'm working on a Sublo thing for like a few months. By the end, I'm like, I know every frame of this, and I just like want it to
Right?
be done.
Yeah.
But the DMX thing, I did in like a week, so I didn't have time to get sick of it. I just kind of like
That's impressive because the
and
way that
also I
that's
just
animated is like so
uh,
unlike the other stuff. Like it's kind of like a weird pastiche of like the
yeah, it's
scrapbooking
very
and like
sloppy.
everything.
Yeah.
No, it's awesome. It's amazing. I wanted to ask about it because I wanted to ask if the idea for that short came first, or if you made the mashup and you're like, I could do a whole short about this. Like,
It was the mashup came first. Yeah, I'd kind of been doing a bunch of DMX mashups. I still haven't put all of them online, and I'm still doing some now. Every once in a while, I'll be listening to a song, and I'll be like, I could hear him going like, "X gonna give it to you." Oh, fuck, waiting for you to get it on your own. I'd be like,
gonna
oh,
deliver to you.
I can put that on there. But yeah, I was doing a bunch of DMX mashups, and I did the David Bowie one, and then I was like splicing. Oh yeah, I did this other one that I think I only put up recently, where it's like DMX over the J-pop group Perfume,
I saw that.
and
I listened to a bit of that one.
and
Yeah,
in the
that's
middle
great.
he starts. I had like did like some sentence mixing where he starts screaming about which ones he finds the hottest in the group, and then I
Right.
was just having such a fun time like splicing his sentences that I was like, oh, maybe I can do a little story here because he's like the thing I love about his raps is that he's like talking about like shooting people and stuff, but like he also has all these really like childish phrases like
Yeah.
in the middle of the song he'll go like knock knock or something or I can't think of any other examples, but like he just says stuff and you're like, this sounds so kind of like weirdly wholesome.
Yeah, no, he's very like sort of like in a lot of stuff that I've heard, he's very like verbose, like not necessarily with the rhymes, but like he does a lot of like off the cuff, just sort of like vamping like in the
It's
middle of the
great.
songs
Yeah.
and stuff.
I mean, he says, yeah, like some of the stuff is like really like aggressive and offensive, but then other stuff, because he's always talking about being a dog. Sometimes
Yeah.
he's like, I know how to chase a cat up in a tree. I'll give you the business for fucking with me. It's like, uh, so like I'll chase a cat up in a tree. It's like, I don't know, very childish in a funny way.
So yeah,
like-
I wanted to ask about because we talked about your sort of influences as far as animation goes, but because you've composed a lot of music yourself and done like all these sort of mashups and remixes and stuff. I was wondering if you had like any sort of musical influence in that regard.
Yeah, lots of musical influence. I guess it depends on the track because I like a bunch of stuff. I've always liked the Beatles, but that's kind of like the most obvious thing you could say about
Right.
music, right? But I like the last few years. I've really liked a lot of like 70s and 80s British post-punk stuff,
Nice.
and just kind of like weird early synthesizer stuff. Like what's like Wendy Carlos and like Jean-Jacques Perry and somebody Kingsley. I forget their name. Perry Kingsley. But yeah, I really like a lot of that stuff. I really like the guy who does the music for all the Loop on the Third stuff, Yuji Ono. He has this great like 70s funk jazz. I really like ABBA.
Yeah, that was actually
David Bowie.
The DMX ABBA remix you did was pretty good too.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if you look at my SoundCloud, you can see like either stuff that I've mashed up or stuff that I've like done like shitty covers of, like a lot of the Sonic the Hedgehog music I really like.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Yeah.
As far as Bowie's concerned, what's your favorite era or your favorite album?
I think it's the Berlin stuff, the
That's a good answer.
Low, Heroes, and Lodger. I really like those ones.
It's good stuff.
But I mean, basically anything he did up until like after Let's Dance, I think I like all that stuff.
Oh yeah, no, I mean it's a chameleon, that dude. I mean, you can
Yeah.
put on like any album and it sounds, completely different from each other. I've always been a big fan of Hunky Dory.
Hunky Dory's great, yeah.
Yeah. No, but yeah, he's fantastic. Definitely one of my favorite artists too.
Yeah, there's like no wrong answer on like what's your favorite David Bowie album. He's got so many and they're so different.
Yeah, no, and especially like sort of the latter stuff, like once he was starting to reach the end of his life, like it's incredible.
Oh yeah, what
like a Black
Lazarus?
Star and
Black Star, yeah,
and the next day.
The next day, yeah,
Yeah.
Next day's pretty good too.
Yeah, fantastic. There was one other thing, just as sort of like an aside that I wanted to ask really quick before I forget about it. But when I was watching through Sublo, you have a bit that's and you mentioned in the commentary that maybe you got a little bit too involved in like this little 2 or 3 second scene that you're kind of doing a spoof of. But there's the episode where they're at the party and there's like the Smash Brothers parody.
Oh yeah. I call
like
it Smack Posse. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it was. I wanted to ask if if you're like big on any particular video games, like if you're a big fan of Smash or
I'm actually not really particularly into Smash. I just noticed that for especially like in my early 20s, like during college, like at any party, like it
There's
was only
always
a matter
Smash
of time
Brothers.
before they brought out the Smash Brothers. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah,
I really liked the Sonic games. Like the 90s ones at least.
for sure.
And then
Yeah.
every once in a while there's a good new one. Like I really liked Generations and Unleashed and Colors and all those ones.
Did you play Mania?
Yeah, and Mania, of course. Yeah, that one's amazing. I actually
Yeah.
didn't play that until like this year, I think.
Yeah, actually,
But,
same.
yeah, that's the best one in like maybe 20 years or something.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I didn't actually get around to playing that until like last year too, so I was kind of slow on the uptake. I think, yeah, maybe there's just like a lot of stigma around newer Sonic releases. I was like, oh, it looks awesome, but maybe I'll just wait a bit, see like what the
Yeah.
actual consensus is on it.
Well, I've been following that guy since before it was like before he was hired
Christian
to
Whitehead?
do that game. Yeah, when he was called Taxman and he was doing, I think it was
Yeah.
called Sonic Retro or Retro Sonic. I was like excited about that game, and then I guess he never finished it because he kind of got hired to actually work for Sega.
He got drafted. Yeah.
Yeah, but Sonic Mania is amazing. Yeah.
I mean, give Sega all the shit you want about like the state of Sonic. At least they just said, like, hey, you fans, you're making all these fan games. You think you can make a good Sonic game? Here you go. And they just let them do it, and they made one of the best Sonic games in years.
I feel like if they did that more often, there'd be more good Sonic games.
Well, and I'm also, and this is completely a tangent. I am very like happy with the fact that Sega has basically given the community blessings. Like, if you guys want to make fan games, as long as you're not making money off of it, go for it.
Yeah, I do like that. Because
whereas,
Nintendo
like-
is really not like that, right?
Yeah, like Nintendo shutting down like that Metroid 2 remake or just like any kind of Nintendo adjacent kind of thing. Just good props to Sega for just like letting the
Being
fans.
good sports.
Yeah, exactly. Not taking any revenue away from them, so just let them do it.
Yeah. I mean, especially if like, I think it helps people get into Sonic when there's good Sonic games to play. You know, like they're more likely to buy like a Sonic shirt if they're like, oh, I like that Sonic fan game.
Yeah, for
Than
sure.
if they're just like, oh, the new Sega Sonic game sucks. I don't like Sonic.
Yeah.
I can only imagine if your exposure to Sonic was only through fan games and you never played an official one.
Well, I was really big on Sonic fan games in like the early 2000s or maybe mid 2000s. I don't know. But I tried to make a few, and then I got as far as like maybe the second level, and then I would just give up on them and start a new one.
Right.
Games are hard, man.
Yeah. Well, I think I've said that in other interviews too, that I kept making games and like spending a bunch of time doing like the first cutscene or two, and then I just realized I just wanted to do the cutscenes, and I was like, I guess I just want to make like shorts rather than games.
There you
Right.
go, man.
I mean, you did a Sonic short not that long ago, right? You took like some footage from your drive through the valley, and like you animated Sonic on top of the moving cars and stuff. That one gave me a good giggle. Like, there's the bit in there where you're like at the stoplight, and like Sonic is just sort of like stomping on tails. Like,
that was another thing. Yeah, I did that all in I think like one morning or something. It was like 4 hours or something. And then my boss at work was like, "Well, I guess that was time well spent," like sarcastically. And I was like, "Oh, actually, I think it really was. I loved that." But yeah, that was another thing that I just like the DMX thing. I did so quickly that I like didn't have time to get sick of it. Like by the time I posted it, I was still like, "Wait, what happens at the beginning again?" And I was like still rewatching it. But I also really like at least the first few Metal Gear Solid games. Like I haven't kept up with it since they recast Snake.
right. So
Metal
yeah,
Gear
I mean,
Solid 1 and 2 especially are like my favorites.
yeah, I mean, at least that Snake recast is only for the last one Kojima did before he sort of left Konami. But I mean, I definitely recommend if you ever find the time and to check out those later Metal Gear games, because I mean, as far as 5 goes, like I think it's got some of the best gameplay in the series. It may be a little lighter on the plot, than some of those older Metal Gears.
That's
but
what
I
I've
mean,
heard. Yeah.
But you have to kind of strike a balance here and there. But yeah, no, I can. Metal Gear is definitely one of my favorite series too.
I mean, honestly, this is revealing me as like a terrible gamer, but like the thing that made it like where I started to lose it with the series is when they got rid of the radar system, just because I was like, oh, I'm too bad at this without the radar.
So
like
you weren't a
Metal
big
Gear
fan
Solid
of
3 was really hard for me. Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, you had like the things where you could ping locations and like. Although that was also when they started, not the initial release, but when they did Subsistence, where they had like the free roaming camera. It wasn't all like the
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah.
the top down thing or whatever.
Yeah, I can definitely see why that would probably kind of divide some people over it. Though I'm sure there's people that sort of prefer the older style of presentation.
It was like more limited for sure, but also just kind of made it easier for me to keep track of everything. Like, okay, there's a guard there, so I don't want to go that way.
right.
Like the more realistic it is for me, like the harder it is to actually be good at it.
Right, yeah.
Them.
I know I'd heard
Really,
from people
what
that they weren't like a big fan of having to actually go through and like dig bullets out of your arms and like apply septic and like bandages and all that sort of thing. But I don't know. I thought it was
yeah,
gonna
a
be
lot
good.
of the time when you get into like the more like nitty gritty like real life stuff, it kind of takes some of the fun out of games. Like I really loved the Grand Theft Auto 3 and Vice City, but then I think it was San Andreas. They started adding like you got to go eat and you got to
Yeah.
go sleep and stuff, and like it turned into like I mean that one's
Micromanaging.
still pretty good, but I never liked The Sims, like all that like maintaining your health stuff in a game is like this isn't what I'm playing a game for. I can just go to the bathroom in real life. I don't have to make my character go to the bathroom.
Dude, all I've ever used The Sims for is just as a house building simulator.
Exactly, yeah. It's always fun to like build the house and build the family. And it's like, these are like my neighbors. I'll make them kill each other, you know? Or like, this is my cousin and this is my best friend. I'll make them like get into a relationship or something. I don't know. It was fun, like just to mess around with, but I never really liked the gameplay part of it that much.
Right.
That's fair.
I really like Crash Bandicoot. The original games.
Did you play the Insane Trilogy or 4?
No, my friend was just telling me that 4 was really good. I'm kind of curious to play it. What else have I been playing? I just replayed the original or the first Red Dead Redemption.
Nice.
That was really good. I love Sleeping Dogs. Have you guys played that?
No, that was one that I always wanted to check out because I think wasn't that the same people that did like True Crime, or was it?
That sounds right. I think it started as like a version of True Crime set in Hong Kong, and then they were like, "Let's just make this a different game."
Yeah. So I played like the first 2 True Crimes and enjoyed them decent enough, and yeah, Sleeping Dogs looked like interesting to me, but I never ran to playing that one.
I love that game. Yeah.
I think it's got a lot of parallels to. I think I'd heard other people mention it in the same breath as like Yakuza kind of. Maybe not exactly the same thing, but sort of like I think there's been a lot of uptake on like a lot of sort of Grand Theft Auto-esque styled games set like in Japan recently. Not to say that Yakuza is one of those, but I think the Sleeping Dogs is more akin to that.
Yeah, Sleeping Dogs is to me like the best Grand Theft Auto game, even though it's not made by Rockstar.
Right.
Just like does so much of the same stuff, but like with a story that's less stupid. I don't know. I'm not always a fan of the writing in the Grand Theft Auto games. Like it's fine when you're like 15, or at least the ones that I played, like in Vice City. Like when I was 15, I was like, "This is so cool," and then replaying it, I'm like, "This is the stupidest thing."
Yeah.
I can definitely relate.
I can attest to that. Yeah.
I just recently replayed through all the PlayStation 2 Grand Theft Autos, like maybe the last couple of years, and definitely the writing is maybe not the strongest, like once you've aged a bit. But I mean,
the
you brought up
stuff on like. Oh, sorry. What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say you brought up like Red Dead. Like, I mean, I think on that and the sequel, like definitely some of the best writing they've done.
Yeah, definitely. I love the writing in those. It's still got a little bit of that same kind of sense of humor. That's like I was saying to my girlfriend, like every exchange between John Marston and like whoever's helping you on the mission. Like, there's the drunk guy who's like, "Oh yeah, I'll help you if you just give me like a bottle of like." Just get me some cheap beer after this mission, and then John Marston's like, "I'll give you some cheap beer up your ass." Like he just turns whatever the guy said into like an insult or a threat.
You made him sound like Stone Cold Steve Austin. Give me a hell yeah.
or the guy's like, "We're gonna need a bigger gun," and he's like, "You're gonna need a bigger gun in your face." He's just always like, I don't even know what that means, but
it's a prime comeback.
He's always like doing these lame comebacks. Yeah. I kept noticing in the middle of a firefight, he'll if you're playing the way I play, like you're looting everybody constantly, so you'll be like getting like shot at by like 20 guys, and it cuts to him crouching down and going, "What have you got for me today?" Just very calmly, while he's like losing a bunch of blood at once.
Oh my god!
I need to play Red Dead.
It's pretty fun.
I forgot about that. That's great. I feel like maybe we got off on a little
Well,
little tangent
We're a
there.
little bit of a detour.
we
yeah.
like to have fun here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say with all the art that you do, all the music that you make, I think it's hilarious that you're also into voice acting. You do Dick Whoop. That's
Yeah,
one of my
I played.
favorite
Oh, I
characters.
didn't realize you did his voice.
I'm the voice of Mr. Dick Woobama.
And I will say too, after watching Sublo and Tangy Mustard, I've adopted Jankum into my
Jacob.
normal
Oh, God.
Well, that's what happened with me. Like, we started talking about it at work a lot because somebody had put posters up in the area warning the residents of the area, like, people
The
have been
dangers
making
of
jankum
jankum.
around here. Like, look
Oh.
out. If you see or smell something, I guess, like, report it. And then we thought that was so funny because there was this like elaborate description of what it was on the posters. And so we just started talking about it, and then it just kind of became like a recurring punchline for me. Yeah.
Yeah, that definitely took me aback to hear the mention of Jankum and Sublo. Like, it was that, and then like just the straight up like swastikas on the U-boat image that just like it popped up on screen. Like those
Yeah,
are
I
two.
don't know if I would do that bit with the U-boat now, but I don't really regret it. It's not like endorsing it or anything. It's just like maybe a little less in the past, in the distance, than I thought it
Sure.
was.
Yeah, for sure.
So
But I mean, I still think it's funny that he would try to put that up and be like, I don't see what's wrong with it.
he's so innocent though. I could definitely see it. I will say that I found out about Sublo and Tangy Mustard on 4chan on Ko.
Oh yeah.
It was that episode specifically. But
Whoa.
what's funny is I had seen Festive Fish long time ago, so I would say I've been a fan for pretty long time ago. It's just up
Cool.
until that point I had known of your work and stuff.
Of course, they would post that one on 4chan. Yeah.
God.
I think that episode it just came out though.
Oh, it was just
thinking-
somebody actually being like, "Hey, here's the new thing." I see.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I've
wasn't-
seen a few threads on there where they bring it up, and it's usually like pretty friendly. Like,
Yeah,
I always feel like
pretty
I'm getting off easy because I know they can be pretty harsh on other stuff. Like whenever they talk about Tuca and Birdie on there, they're like, "Oh, this sucks. Like, this looks terrible."
I think
Such
there's
a
probably a
shitty
lot
writing.
more aversion to stuff that's like on a network as opposed to like people that are just doing their own thing, like their own independent stuff. Probably.
That's true. They're pretty supportive of like independent stuff on there. But anyway, oh yeah, you were saying you'd seen like the Festive Fish stuff like years ago.
Yeah.
Those were
Like,
on
way long time.
Yeah, in like 2010, I think I did the first one.
Okay.
I posted, or I didn't post
Yeah.
them. Jerry Beck posted them on Cartoon Brew, which is how I think a lot of people saw them at the time.
That sounds about right.
And I kind of was like, I had like a decent following from that. From every time I did one, they'd post it there. And then I just, when I finished school, I stopped making my own cartoons for a couple of years. Because I moved to LA and started working full time in the animation industry, and I was like, oh, I'm not sure what I want to do right now. Like, I don't know if I want to do another Festive Fish because those are so much work and I don't have time. And then I ended up, I could make another one now, and I have the time to do it. But I was also just kind of like, well, I've done 4 of those. Maybe that's enough for now.
I think I saw it pretty recently. You were like, "Oh, I'm thinking about coming back. Maybe not."
I am, yeah.
Yeah.
I've never been like against it, but recently I was more kind of like, like maybe I should pitch that because it's something that I wouldn't be that upset if like I had to like change 1 or 2 things in it. Like when I was doing the shorts, people were like, you should pitch it, and I was like, oh, but it's so like I just want it to be exactly what I'm doing. I don't want to change it, which is kind of how I am about Sublo and Tangy Mustard right now.
Mhm.
Like if I pitched it and they were like, can you change like Tangy Mustard into this other thing or like replace Katie with a different character, I'd probably be like more reluctant. But if they were like talking about Festive Fish and they had some changes they want to make, at this point I think my version is like my pure kind of independent vision of it is so kind of like clearly separate because they did them so long ago that I wouldn't be
Right.
that upset having to like tweak things.
Excuse me.
Yeah, that's the problem with go in with networks, you have to go with the notes and all that kind of stuff. When doing independent, you have your whole creative vision with you,
Yeah.
but it's also you're kind of independently doing it. You don't have a team helping you out, so it's a little.
Right. I mean, or what were you gonna say? Sorry.
I was gonna say there's kind of like a little give and take on that. It's
Yeah, I guess it seems like more and more there is kind of a middle ground. Like my friends who are doing Setina, they've got like a small team, and they're like making money from like Patreon and like streams and stuff. So there's that kind of like middle ground between doing it entirely on your own for no money, like I am right now, or like, well, I've got a tiny bit on Patreon, but not a whole lot. Versus like a full on like studio industry like corporate thing, because that just seems so like unappealing to me. Like every once in a while, I'm like, maybe I should pitch just to make money doing it, but I don't like the people who I talk to about it are never like, I'm so glad that I like got to make my show and stuff. They're like, yeah, it wasn't really what I wanted it to be, and like it took so many years, Like the people I know who have made like pilots or shorts, they're not usually like thrilled with the outcome, but they get paid for it. I guess they get the money.
it's understandable.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how easy is it to go and pitch if you're like, all right, I'm ready, let's do it?
I mean, it depends though. Like because the places I've pitched which haven't been very many. I think I've only done like two or three. They were kind of like literally just like open to anything. But one of them was CBC in Canada, and they had an established connection with Ryan, who plays Sublo.
Oh,
And they
okay.
were like, "Oh yeah, we want to do another thing with him. He does the voice in this cartoon. Let's look at the cartoon." But I feel like there's one or two where I've pitched and it hasn't been any prior connection. But generally, the places do kind of want to be like, "Wait, who are you? Like, why do we know you or care about your thing?"
Right.
They kind of want to like already be aware, which is why I think a lot of places only take pitches from people with like agents. At one point, I was going to get an agent, and then I was like, "What am I doing? Like, this feels so corporate." Not that I mean, having an agent isn't really, but like, I was kind of like a little freaked out by it. I was like, "Is this the direction I want to go? Where I have an agent? I don't know. I think I want to scurry back to being independent."
How hard is it to get an agent? Because preaching to the choir here,
I don't think it's that hard.
stuff.
I don't know. I have this weird thing where if I'm able to like do something, I'm like, oh, that doesn't really mean anything. It's not that hard. Um, but like, yeah, I don't know. My friend was just like, hey, you want to meet my agent? Maybe he could be your agent. And then he was like, yeah, I'll be your agent. And I was like, maybe not yet. Because in between projects, I always have these little like crises where I'm like, I don't know what I want to do. Do I want to like keep working in the industry? Do I want to like do something else? And so I was kind of like in one of those moods, and he was like, all right, like I'm gonna get you like pitching to these places and these, and I can get you this kind of work. And I was like, oh, none of this really sounds good to me right now.
Nah, man. I mean, I can definitely give you credit for like wanting to stay on your kind of independent path and like being able to work on the stuff that you want to work on like the way you want to do it. So I mean, I definitely understand that kind of mindset.
Yeah, like I have no regrets about Sublo and Tangy Mustard or any of the stuff that I've done independently, and and like I own everything. And I can say like, oh, if I made like a bad decision, it was me. It wasn't like because I'm so mad that I got screwed by the network or the studio made me change something. Uh, yeah, I don't know. I like being independent. I wish I had slightly more time to do stuff, or maybe a
Right.
little more money than the amount that I get on Patreon.
Everyone, go donate to the man's Patreon. He deserves it.
Well,
Definitely.
the thing is, I collect on Patreon per cartoon, not per month, because like right now I haven't worked on it much since I finished the picnic episode, just because I've been busy with my day job on Tuca and Birdie. So I don't want to be like collecting money if like I'm not giving anything to them.
Right.
So, but maybe I'm thinking like once I start this next batch, I might switch it to monthly.
Nice.
But yeah, I don't know. I do like them kind of I kind of like having these two separate things, you know, like my industry career and my like personal work,
Yeah.
and not having to like compromise the personal work to be in the industry. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure.
It's kind of nice, yeah.
So kind of speaking, like since you are an industry person, I guess I'd kind of like to, like, what was your experience about first getting into it? Like, how did you find your way into the industry, and like, what your experience working on like these kind of productions has been for you?
Yeah, it was kind of through the independent stuff that I got into the industry. It was just, I mean, I guess that's how everybody does, really. But um, like I was making those Festive Fish shorts and putting them online, and that's kind of what got me attention on like smaller jobs. Like, you know, people contacted me and said like, "Hey, I wanted you to animate like 30 seconds of this thing for me," and so I'd do that, and then they'd be like, "Okay, now I'm going to have you animate this short, Baker Man and the Bunny Man."
Which was
And then
horrific, by the way.
I didn't write it; I just animated it.
No, I know, I saw, but no,
Designed
the
it, I
animation
guess.
on it is incredible. But boy, the content in it was definitely. I was a little
Yeah,
because I saw the little 30-second one that you did for Sonic Bunny, the one with all the vegetables and the rabbit jumping in the stew.
yeah. What was that thing? Yeah, I know the one you mean. Yeah. But yeah, Baker Man and the Bunny Man is a little more violent than I would usually go. Not even violent, but just like it's a little more gory than I would usually go. You know?
It's definitely more graphic for sure, but
Yeah, yeah.
it's great though.
It
Unfortunately,
was fun doing it.
it's unlisted, but if you know where to look, I think if you go like on the Kickstarter page for it, there's a link to the unlisted video on there.
Oh,
Definitely,
is it not on YouTube anymore?
it's on YouTube, but it's set as unlisted, so I think you can only get to
Oh,
it if you
weird.
have the link. But
I see.
I was able to find it, so I was able to watch it. So that was
Nice.
definitely worth watching.
I wonder why it's unlisted, huh? I'm curious now. Anyway, maybe I'll ask Scout next time I see her.
Sure.
Although I don't know when that's going to be with COVID.
I know. Ugh.
So how's been working in animation with COVID going? Because I have a few friends they're like, man, it's going swimmingly. It's been amazing, honestly.
It hasn't been too bad, yeah. I mean, it's been weird because it's also the first time I'm the supervising director on a show, you know? So, like, there's a bunch of things that changed all at once, kind of, for me. Uh, but it's basically seems to be kind of the same process as we would be doing in the studio with a lot of the same people. It's just like we're doing like video reviews because instead of watching like all the storyboards with everybody, they just you know, they each watch a separate video and then we come together over Zoom to like discuss it and get notes. And that's been a little weird because it's hard to gauge how people react to stuff like when you're all watching separately, you know.
Sure.
Yeah.
But the process of like doing the boards and me giving notes on them is basically the same as it would have been otherwise. I don't think it's like affected the show. It's just affected the way we make it kind of a little bit because there's not quite as much like organic, like just sitting there chatting with somebody about a scene. You know,
Mhm.
it's more like they do the scene and then you look at it and you're like, actually, can you add this? It's less like spontaneous, I guess. But I think the final product ends up being the same.
Yeah,
So
it'll
the
be
show.
sorry, go ahead, Matt.
No, sorry. I was going to say the show that you are referring to is Tuca and Birdie.
Oh,
Right?
yeah, yeah. We got picked up for a second season on Adult Swim.
Yeah. So I definitely wanted to ask you about that, but some specific questions, but maybe I'll approach it later. But I just wanted to get some context for
Sure,
that
yeah.
because I had a feeling that's what you're talking about. But
Yeah. Sorry, I should have made that clear. Yeah, I'm supervising director on season 2 of Tuca and Birdie. We're doing 10 episodes for Adult Swim, and I'm also directing one of them.
Nice.
Maybe 1.5. I don't know what we're saying. Basically, just one.
now, can you confirm or deny if they had? Because I know that you did the main titles for the original Tuca and Birdie with all the bouncing buildings and boobs.
Yeah.
So that was the first thing I thought of when I thought like, Tuca and Birdie is actually getting picked up for another season, but it's going to be on network television. I was thinking like, oh boy, that's going to be the first thing to go.
That was my first thought too when we had the meeting about it getting picked up again. I was like, so are we gonna like that was That was my main question that I had.
How
When
much
they were
you have to dial back?
just specifically the intro boobs. I was like, so I guess we're gonna have to change those boobs in the first shot of the intro.
Right. Yeah, I mean that totally makes sense. But
But I think
was
we might do a different length intro too. Like I think it might be 15 seconds instead of 30 or something. Because a lot of the episodes, I don't think this is a spoiler or any. I'm not going to get in trouble for saying this, but they're coming in longer than they should be. You know,
Yeah.
just because the scripts are long and then we add gags and stuff. So every episode we keep being like, how long is this one? Like, how far over are we? Like, are we still have the full length intro in there? Maybe we can like use like a 15-second version or something.
Yeah.
Because we want to cram in as much as we can, but we also have like a set amount of time, you know.
I'm sure we'll talk. I don't know how deep we want to get into Tuca and Birdie right now. We can if you want, but I just want to say like as soon as I saw the title sequence for that show and I saw just there's just a shot of like Tuca and Birdie just like walking very awkwardly towards the camera. I knew exactly that was you because it just looks like this looks like a Sublo and Tangy Mustard kind of walk.
Yeah.
That's good to hear. Yeah, I had a lot of fun doing the intro. It was like very last minute. Like we'd kind of finished most of the episodes. We finished all the storyboards for the episodes, and it was in the middle of animation retakes by the time they were finally like, so what are we doing? Should we have an intro for the show? And I was like, yeah, let's do it. I want to direct the intro. So basically they were like, okay, well, just have Tuca and Birdie walking through Birdtown or something. And so that was kind of my like starting point. And they had, I think, like 2 or 3 music tracks that they weren't sure about which they wanted to use, and they ended up like playing the intro or the animatic for the intro with different tracks to kind of like test which one people liked the best at the studio. And they took a poll, and everybody kind of liked the song that we ended up using, which is by the same composer as the rest of the series. Like he does all the music for the episodes too.
Oh, cool.
So it seemed like just a good fit because it's like, yeah, this is how the show sounds already.
So kind of backing up like proto, I guess what we could call proto Tuca and Birdie. So you worked on Bojack, I'm guessing kind of like worked on there originally, left to do I guess Trip Tank, and then like went back later on.
Yeah.
So what were your like kind of like what all did you like kind of do for Bojack, and like what was your experience like on that show?
So in the first season, so I did Trip Tank season 1 as an animator mostly, and I directed one short. And then on BoJack season 1, I did storyboarding. I think on episodes 2, 3, 7, and 12. And then after that, I did character designs for like a few weeks because they just needed some extra characters. Because every character design they had in the first season was like, you know, for a specific purpose. It was like, oh, well, this like particular gag needs like a butterfly or something. So all the side characters that we had as like just random extras to populate the world were always like weird animals. It would be like a rainbow colored chameleon or like, you know, a giant bug person. And they were like, can you just make some human extras? Just to keep me busy until retake started.
Sure.
So I did that. And I got to draw myself in as an extra.
Yeah.
And ended up showing up throughout the whole series because he was just such a generic human without a lot of crazy identifying things. So he kind of fit into a lot of scenes.
Yeah, that's actually like one of my favorite things of like the animators that like we're friends with is when they like post a little thing and like, oh hey, I got snuck into the background of this scene, and just like see either they themselves drew it or like one of the other artists like rendered them in that show style. I just like when people like point that out to us.
My friend Michael Ruwako, I think he was drawn into like 6 cartoons in 1 year at one point. We put him into one on Trip Tank. I think he was in an episode of Rick and Morty. He was in a bunch of things, just drawn in as like a background person because one of his friends worked on the show.
That's awesome.
But yeah, then later in season 1 of BoJack, I did some retake animation and some promos where they were like, hey, we need this 60 seconds of animation done in a day on a Saturday. Can you do it? And I was like, I guess so. So those are really bad. If you ever see any of the early like BoJack PSA kind of promos. There's one I think where he talks about like please binge watch responsibly or something. I had like a day to do a minute of animation.
Oh,
So those are not great. And then season 2, I think I only did promos because I was mostly directing on Trip Tank season 2. And then in season 3, they brought me back full time on BoJack as like an assistant director, and I did like the flashback episode to 2007, the underwater episode, and
yeah, that
episode
underwater
where-
episode is definitely the one a lot of people seem to bring up now when they kind of talk about BoJack's legacy as like being like one of the greatest episodes of the show.
it's funny because I don't think it's like better than any of the other episodes, or maybe better than some. I don't think it's like one of the best episodes. I think it's just one of the most like different,
Unique. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very different because there's like, is there any talking in that episode or?
Yeah, there's at the beginning and the end. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, the bulk of it, like there's, I don't know, like a 19-minute stretch without talking or something. But yeah, what was the other one I did? Oh yeah, the one where he wins an Oscar, or he almost wins the Oscar, or thinks he's nominated. 310, the same one where like he has the crazy party and he like drives his car into the Tesla into the pool.
Right.
And then I started directing in season 4, and I kind of kept directing for the rest of the series. I think I would do 3 episodes each season.
Nice.
Yeah, because I wanted to ask, because when I was just going through your IMDb and just kind of getting the dates on everything, it looked like I wasn't sure if you were just sort of on, not necessarily on the back burner for BoJack because you were working on Trip Tank and like Greatest Party Story Ever and that sort of thing, but I wasn't sure if like you had actually left and then they came back, because I wasn't sure like a lot of people realized how huge BoJack was going to be at the time. Because I mean, like, yeah, it was like Netflix's most popular animated show by far.
I guess
And,
so,
like,
yeah. Well, I
like,
didn't
so
go
much
anywhere. I was still at the same studio the whole time, but it was like in between seasons of BoJack, I would do like I think just one sketch on each season of Greatest Party Story.
Okay.
And it's so weird to me that show is not online. Not because
Yeah,
it's like a great show, but just because like it's all like sketches, like Trip Tank too. They should just have all those sketches up on YouTube.
Yeah.
I was trying to look for like a lot of the stuff, and it was kind of hard to kind of navigate trying to find some of that stuff for me.
I
At
should
least
just
on
upload it
YouTube.
myself or something.
Yeah, there you go.
At this point, I don't think anybody cares.
Right.
I mean, I don't think Trip Tank has like a huge legacy that they're keeping track of or anything.
Sure. But I mean, it's part of your legacy, It's something
Yeah,
that you
exactly.
worked on.
A lot of
definitely
animators
wanted to
worked
prove
on
that.
a lot of cool stuff. Like they got like Felix Colgrave to do some stuff.
Oh, Red.
I like it.
I forget. I mean, just the credits of Trip Tank have a ton of. Zarel did a few sketches, and like I don't know if he's posted them. Like I don't know if you're allowed to really, but I've seen a few on YouTube, and nobody seems to be getting in trouble. So maybe I'll post the ones I did.
There you go.
That'd be cool.
They weren't like great. I wasn't involved in any of the writing, just the directing and animation on some of them. But certain ones have more of my like own kind of like style and like input into them, and then others are like, okay, well, I guess I got to do this one now.
Right.
Yeah.
Like not all of them were like a great fit for me, but some of them were a lot of fun.
Some of them felt more like work than others.
Yeah, some of them were like, how am I going to try and like make this funny? It's such a dumb script.
That must
But, I
be
mean,
difficult working like in the industry where you have to work on a script independent of like the animation, where you can't actually go in and tweak everything. You just have to go off of what's already there without a lot of wiggle room to sort of improvise.
The good thing about Trip Tank is ultimately nobody really cared if it was funny, because I think a lot of the sketches were not that funny.
Right.
But I guess it was good enough. It was really fun to work on because of that, because there was so little like pressure to do anything any particular way. Like you could kind of pitch whatever styles you wanted for most of the shorts. BoJack obviously is a lot more of consistent look and feel to it.
Yeah, for sure. Man, that must have been very because you directed the finale for BoJack, right?
Yeah, I did, but I mean, the one before that is kind of the real like climax. Like in every season of BoJack, the second last episode is really like the climax, the big interesting one, and then the one like the final episode of the season is always just it's just the cool down,
Yeah,
but still.
I hadn't like I kind of forgot, and this is kind of just how Netflix puts things out. I kind of forget what happens between seasons of shows because they're like a year between each other.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the binging model of, or I don't know.
it has
dumping a whole
its.
season at once.
I like the instant gratification of it, but I don't like the long waits between batches.
Yeah, it makes the waits longer, and it makes it hard to like talk about the show in any real way. Like if a thing's
Exactly,
coming
yeah.
out every week, you can be like, "Oh yeah, I can't believe what happened," and like, "What's going to happen next?" Like, there's so much more to talk about. But if a show just all comes out at once and everybody's watching it at their own pace, all you can
Mhm.
really say without spoiling stuff for people is like, "Oh yeah, I liked it," or "I didn't like it." You can't
Yeah.
really be like, "Yeah, there's this cool moment in that episode where this happens, right? Like, did you see that one?" They'll be like, "No, I'm on episode 2," or "I
Right.
watched that 6 months ago. I already forgot."
Yeah.
Everybody's at a different place.
But basically it was like I had forgotten the whole thing about like, the second to last episode of BoJack is like the real important one before like the very last one. So when I had watched that second to the last episode where like BoJack is basically in limbo, with all his family and other people, when that episode ended, I'm like, okay, that's a good ending. I'm okay with that. And then it starts the next episode. I was like, what? That wasn't the end.
Yeah, I think that happened for a lot of people. There's like, wait, there's more?
Not to say like I do think like I think BoJack ends very well and appropriate for the kind of show it is. It was just very jarring that it keeps going after where I thought it was going to end.
Yeah, well, it doesn't help that season has more episodes than the others. Like usually, they had 12 episodes, but that one had an extra 4.
Oh yeah.
Right, because they split up
So
the season into 2 halves, right? It was like 8 and 8.
Oh, that's right.
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
still not really sure what the reasoning or thought that went into that was, but
Drag it out, I guess.
we kind of, I guess so. I guess Netflix was just doing that a lot at that point, like splitting seasons in 2. But
They
yeah,
did
we knew
that
that from the beginning of the season going in. There would be 4 extra episodes, and it would be split in half.
I know. Yeah, I know they do that with some shows. I know specifically they did that with like Voltron.
Yeah.
Because I remember they had like I think it's like season 3 or 4. It had like 6 episodes, and then like literally 2 months later they came out with like another 12 episode season. But they like differentiate them as different seasons. Like, what's the
It's so
point of
weird
that?
how, I mean, it seems like Cartoon Network does that too, and like I know Fox did that in the original run of Futurama. It just always seems like networks are uh like chopping up the seasons in weird ways that make it harder to keep track of like how many seasons, how many episodes there are, and which ones were done as part of what order.
Yeah, that's so weird. Like I'll see creators having to come out on Twitter nowadays. I'm like, okay, so if you're gonna be rewatching this is the actual order you should be watching it in.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, good to know.
At least they usually put them out in the right order on Netflix. It's just like
Right, yeah. I do
weird
appreciate that
breaks
much.
where you're like, is this a different season or what?
But I mean, would you say that you had like a good experience working on BoJack? Like was
Oh
the
yeah.
like
I had
good kind of crew, good writers, all that stuff?
Yeah, I had a great time on BoJack. I mean, it got like any show, or like any job, after you've done it for a few years, you're kind of like a little restless. But
Right.
like I wasn't, at the end of season 6, I felt like it was a good time for it to go. I felt like if there was another season, I wouldn't necessarily want to do it.
Yeah.
Just because I was like, oh, I don't feel like I'm necessarily learning much, or like directing most episodes of the show tended to be kind of the same, just because that's how TV works.
For sure.
So I was kind of like, it might be interesting to like work on a different show after this. Oh, it's ending this season. Okay, well then I'll just stick around for the last season.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of people that are always bummed when a show ends. But I don't know about Matt and Kyle here, but I'm like definitely in the camp that I would rather a show end at an appropriate point and like get to do the kind of ending that it wants to do rather than
Yeah.
drag itself out and possibly just
Yeah,
get to a point
tarnish
where it's
itself.
stale, doesn't get to kind of has like a very weak ending.
This that definitely happened on this Canadian show I like, Trailer Park Boys.
Oh,
I
dude, I
love
love
the
Trailer
first
Park Boys.
the first few seasons of it I really loved. Like especially the first two were so kind of like perfect. Like if it had just ended at that point or like another season, like season 3 is pretty good too. But then seasons 4 and 5 kind of got a little sillier and kind of bigger and dumber and stupider. And then, but I still liked them. But then season 6 and 7 kind of were getting more in that direction, and then they canceled it. But then they kept bringing it back, and it's just like it won't go away. You know, it's just kind of painful at this point. Like half the cast is either dead or left. And
It's a
like,
cartoon now too.
but the early days of that show, I love so much. It's so funny to me.
Yeah, Trailer Park Boys is incredible.
And it's crazy too how broad it got, because like in the beginning it feels so believable, like the characters all feel like real people, and then now it's like, I mean, now it literally is a cartoon, but before that it was becoming such a cartoon where they're like, whoa, Snoop Dogg's in this little trailer park or the little trailer park in Nova Scotia, what are you doing here, Snoop Dogg? And he's like,
Yeah,
hey, I just wanted to come hang out with Bubbles, you know.
I'd always used whenever I try to sell any of my friends on Trailer Park Boys, and because the cartoony, the way they got like really cartoony is definitely sort of I would describe it as basically an adult Ed, Ed and Eddie.
Yeah, that's a good comparison actually.
Yeah. Because it does just got like kind of really ridiculous. Not to say that I didn't enjoy a lot of that later stuff, but I definitely haven't kept up on like the last like 2 or 3 seasons. They did that whole they did the cartoon as well. I haven't gone around and checking that one out,
Yeah,
but
the cartoon
I'm sure
looks really bad. I know a couple of people who worked on it, and I don't think they were happy I said it looked really bad, but they were like, I'm not arguing, I just wish you wouldn't say it so loud.
I mean, is there any example of an animated adaptation of a live action property that is like done well?
I don't know. Maybe some of those like animated series in the 90s that they did
Maybe.
based on movies. I can't think of any though. I mean,
Yeah,
the ones I'm thinking of are not good either. Like I know there was maybe the answer is just no.
I thought a lot of people liked Napoleon Dynamite, but I never watched
that show died real fast.
Well, the thing with that show, I saw when it premiered, because I liked the movie, but then the show came out like 10 years later,
Yeah.
and then B, like the movie is so dry and deadpan and like quiet and like it's so has this like particular kind of mundane feel to it. But then the first episode of the show, the night that I was watching the premiere, was like Napoleon and Pedro in like Thunderdome or something, and it's like this is so not what makes Napoleon Dynamite entertaining.
Yeah, the humor did not lend itself to animation.
Like it's not about like crazy like fantasy sequences. Like the whole funny thing about Napoleon Dynamite is that it was so like small.
Yeah, it's deadpan awkward humor. That's why it's funny.
It's not like, wouldn't it be funny if we put Napoleon into space or something? Like, no, that's not what this is.
So Aaron, you brought up something that I did want to ask about when you were talking about the Trailer Park Boys cartoon not looking very good, because well no, not necessarily, no, not about that. It was just specifically about, because there's a lot of people out there that are well, okay, I'll just put it like this. I think most adult animation that's out there doesn't really look good. Like they all have this very similar, but I feel like
agreement.
Yeah, and I was just wondering, like, if you like what your feelings on that is, because as somebody that's worked on Bojack and Tuca, where they definitely have this sort of, because it's like different from Sublo and Tangy Mustard, where everything is like animated by hand, and like so there's like stock character models and stuff to work with. But I mean, I feel like Bojack and Tuca definitely have a lot of fun with like I mean, they're all like animal people, like that's and aside from that, but I mean, like I feel like a lot of the majority of adult animation out there, it just looks really plain, or just looks like stylistically just looks really ugly, and it's just like if you're
I definitely agree. I don't want to name specific things, but there's one studio in particular that does a lot of adult animation that I really don't like any of their stuff.
Right.
And it sucks because a lot of my friends after Bojack, and like even during Bojack, people would come and go and work on other shows. But right after Bojack, a bunch of my friends went and worked at this studio on a bunch of shows that sounded like were pretty difficult. to at least difficult to make them good. And then a few of them were able to come back for Tuca, and others were like, "Well, this other show pays pretty well." Um, I guess that's like the upside of those shows is that like the working conditions on them are generally pretty decent, as opposed to like a more I mean, the working conditions on BoJack and Tuca were also good, but as opposed to like I don't know something like Ren and Stimpy where you're like pushing the envelope, but and like having a lot of fun visually, but it's like a nightmare of an experience.
Yep.
Like I think that's the appeal of some of those shows for people is that they have like just a steady, consistent job where they're like, I know exactly what I have to do, and then at the end of the day, I go home and I'm not working late or stressing about stuff.
Right.
Um,
It's just you kind of see it. I mean, it's a paycheck, honestly. Like,
yeah, that's the thing. Like, it's like, well, I mean, if that's all you want, like, why are you in animation? I mean, like
that's true too.
that's kind of how I feel about it. Like, I would just rather probably do something else because it seems like it'd be a little soul crushing to me, but I've never had to because I've been lucky that I've been on these shows that I like.
Yeah, that's really great that you've been able to have projects that you're proud of and look forward to actually going into work for.
Yeah, I mean, like on Tuca especially, the only limit is the budget. Like we're not like it's not like anything's off the table in terms of like trying things with the visuals. It's a question of like, is it going to come out well? And sometimes it's hard to get it to look the way we want. But I think with BoJack, there's a little more restraint, not like heavily enforced, but just kind of like on the team. Like it's not like anybody was like, I'm going to have BoJack do like a Tex Avery take. That'll be perfect for this scene. We were just kind of all aware, like that's not really what this show is going for.
Yeah, there's a very clear divide in sort of like BoJack and Tuca and Birdie, how they sort of operate in that regard. I think I really enjoy how Tuca and Birdie like plays around a lot more with like the fact that they're sort of like animal people like in this world, and not even that, like there's like plant people and like kind of like the way that the environment's animated and stuff. It's like very clearly not BoJack, but it has a lot of that flavor to it still. And as far as like the story content goes, like it's it's similar but very different from like a different viewpoint and stuff. So there's enough there to like appeal to a whole different subset of like a whole different audience, but while also wanting to keep the same audience that they already got as sort of like
I mean both shows are like BoJack was created by Raphael Bob Waxberg, and Lisa Hannawalt designed the characters for it, but she wasn't involved in the writing at all. And then on Tuca and Birdie, it's her designs and her stories. A lot of them are like based on things in her comics that she was even doing before BoJack. And Raphael is on it as like an executive, but he's kind of likes to stay out of Lisa's way and like this is like her show, and BoJack was Raphael's show, so that's why they look the same but feel so different.
Yeah.
I remember
I find it weird. Huh?
I was gonna say I remember reading in the art book the whole plant people thing was kind of toyed around with BoJack, and then it just didn't go any farther.
Oh, I think she was probably trying to push for it because I know she had them in her comics like way before that, and was like maybe pitching it. And Raphael was probably like, "That's a little too weird for this world." But it's funny when people look at like I don't know if maybe they're just looking at like a screen grab of Tuca or something, and they're like, "This looks just like BoJack." It's like if you watch it, I think it's pretty clear immediately that it's not like BoJack in terms of like the storytelling or filmmaking or anything.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to say that, especially when like Tuca and Birdie was coming out, there was a lot of that talk about like, oh, this is just like a BoJack spin-off or anything, and like
I saw people saying it was bootleg BoJack, and I was like, it's made by the same people.
Yeah,
it's not a bootleg.
But it's like, other than like the fact that there's like weird animal human hybrids, Tuca and Birdie is such a different show. Like, writing wise, tonally, it is completely different from BoJack. And I'm glad that it is, because even if it does share some similar design elements, I'm glad that it isn't like this kind of heavy drama that BoJack turned into, and is just like this really goofy, just slice of life with these two friends. And I feel bad because I feel like I almost contributed it to Netflix not wanting to pick it up again, because I didn't watch it until I think the news that it had been renewed.
Well, it's not just your fault. I mean, they only had it out for like 3 months before they were like, okay, it's failed. You know, like that was a
Well,
pretty quick turnaround.
something I kind of want to bring up. I don't know if that's something you want to talk about or not.
Sure, yeah.
Was about the whole strike thing. How
Oh yeah. I mean, I probably can't talk everything about it, but I mean, we can acknowledge it. What specifically do you want to ask?
um I know it kind of affected both shows, didn't it?
No, actually, it didn't really affect either. Ultimately, like we already knew that was going to be the last season of BoJack before we tried to become Union. Uh, and Tuca and Birdie, I think had already come out. I forget the exact timeline, but um, I think Netflix had already decided they didn't want to do another season of it. I
Okay.
can't remember the exact timeline, but I know it definitely BoJack was already like, this is going to be the last season, which was actually a reason why I was initially like, wait, so why would we bother unionizing? Like if it's not going to like ensure that future seasons are going to be union because there won't be any. But then we were talking about how, well, if they do more Tuca, then it would make that probably be union, and it's definitely for the best that we did it. But initially, I was kind of like, wait, but it's like, why now? Like it's too late. Why not like 3 years ago or something?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely in the moment.
I think that's where a lot of the rumors and stuff started coming from, was that whole event that had happened.
Yeah, that's too bad because it really had nothing to do with that. Like the unionization was so far after the decision for it to be the last season. Like I think at least half the season had already been written at that point, probably.
Oh,
And what else? Yeah, I don't know. I forget what else was going on around that time, but it didn't really like factor into the decision to end it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I did. You kind of mentioned earlier that about like BoJack ending where it did, and like not really wanting another season because like you were starting to maybe feel your limit with how much you could do with that kind of show. So what was it like? And like how did you moving on to Tuca and Birdie from that? Like how did that come about? And like what was your experience with that?
Well, in season 1 of Toucan Birdie, it was literally like, I'd say at least 80% the same crew as BoJack. We were just kind of like, like the shackles of realism were removed and we were allowed to do crazy cartoony stuff. So everybody was like, oh, okay, like we know how to make a show. Like we've been working together, the same kind of like production pipeline and stuff. Uh, and it was just kind of like, okay, like who wants to do another show in between instead of going on hiatus? And so we all did. And then after BoJack season 6, Mike Hollingsworth was the supervising director of BoJack the whole time, and he went to Netflix just because there wasn't another job, because it took a while to get season 2 of Tuca and Birdie going. Like there was talk, almost as soon as it was over, like hey, maybe we could like do it somewhere else, but it took them a while to get like a deal in place, I think.
Right.
Um, but yeah, so Mike was busy at Netflix, and so they needed somebody else to become supervising director, and I don't know how I was chosen, but I was a little surprised, to be honest. I was like, really? Uh, I feel like there's better choices out there from BoJack, but they ended up having me do it.
That's awesome.
I mean, that's always kind of been my experience throughout my career. Is like, really, you want me to do this thing? And it's also the same reason usually too. It's usually because the person who was doing it before me has left, and they're like, okay, well, who's around right now? I guess Aaron's here. Let's ask Aaron to do it.
Yeah, I guess they just recognize your natural talent, man.
That's a nice way to say it. I hope that's part of it. I think a lot of it is literally like, like who like hasn't like majorly screwed up. Okay, Aaron's like a decent artist. He's like, he's here. He's not like terrible to work with.
Yeah.
I don't think it's necessarily because they're like, he's the greatest artist,
I'll give yourself some more credit than that, man. Come on.
I don't know.
Although, yeah, definitely moving into a different role, like in between, like especially because not knowing that if you're going to get renewed to somewhere else for season 2, and then having to go into an entirely different job on that show while having to work remotely is definitely must have had like an adjustment period.
That was scary. Yeah, I was like happy to. Well, I mean, I was still like took the decision seriously to become supervising director, but it was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna hopefully be working with all the same people, and we'll be like, largely like the same environment and stuff. Like it just felt like, oh, I've seen how that works. I can do that. And then it was like, oh, by the way, it's all gonna be remote. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I know how to do that.
Right.
So it was nervous, or I was nervous about it, but it ended up working still basically the same.
Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't drastically different than what my job would have been anyway, but I just miss being able to like go to lunches with people or like hang out after work with people.
Oh, for
Like,
sure.
the social element of it is basically what I miss. We do a lot of meetings, like one every morning and one every evening. So we still get to like talk to each other, but it's just it's more casual if you're just sitting next to somebody and you happen to be like, "Hey, did you see this funny video?" Than like if you're like staring at everybody's face in the meeting and you're like, "All right, everybody, I have a funny video to share." It's so much more fun.
Share it with the class.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's a lot of the same people who worked on season 1 and season 6 of BoJack, and a bunch of new people too who are all really good. I've been having a pretty good time on it.
Awesome. Well, I'm definitely looking forward to it. Yeah, like once I heard the news that it was getting picked, because I mean, like a lot of people, I was like heartbroken that season 2 is not going to be happening on Netflix. But then when the news came out that no, Adult Swim's picked it up, I was just like, oh man, there's actually hope in this world for once. Like,
and I gotta say, of all the people to pick you guys up, I think Adult Swim is probably the most appropriate place for it to go.
Oh yeah. I really love some of the stuff Adult Swim's done recently. Like YOLO Crystal Fantasy is like my favorite show of this year, maybe last year too. That show just makes me laugh so hard.
I need to like
really cool.
I need to start watching more. I watched like maybe the first 3, and like I fucking love Bush World Adventures. Like that shit has me rolling no matter how many times I watch it.
That's so good. My favorite thing I think in any of the episodes is in the second one, I think, where there's like a crowd that's really excited and it cuts to like a rotoscoped guy just pounding the ground really hard. It's so good.
Oh, that man is so something is with that man.
He's a genius.
But yeah, it's just very, it's a very off sense of humor, and it takes me a while to get into it.
I just love the awkward mix of like there'll be some weird fantasy element and then it'll suddenly turn into a super mundane,
right,
very specifically Australian situation.
I just love it's very hypersly specific Australian.
I just love
it's
it
just
when
not
stuff
something
is
you
really
see very
specific like that. Yeah, I mean that's the same thing I like in Trailer Park Boys, how it's very specifically Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
Like just the details of like what they eat and stuff, or like what they call things. Like like on Trailer Park Boys, Ricky's always trying to get his like pepperoni sticks and stuff, or just all that kind of regional detail. I find really funny.
So I guess before we start getting more into what I would like to really dive into Sublo and Tangy Mustard, but is there any kind of like kind of details or stories that like you're fond of from your time working on BoJack, and I guess like you're still concurrently working on Tuca and Birdie, but like any kind of any kind of things that have stood out to you with your time in those productions?
I mean, there are a lot of funny stories. It's hard to remember them all. There's been weird stuff. Like, what was it? It's not stuff that's related to the show, though. It's always. I don't know if it'd make a good story to like tell on a podcast.
Sure.
It's just like, this one guy was doing this weird thing, and then somebody else said a funny thing. But it's not like it relates to BoJack. It just relates to those specific people.
Sure.
Right.
Kind of like you had to be there, kind of story.
Yeah, or like it wouldn't be satisfying as like a BoJack related story necessarily.
Sure. Well, okay, that's okay.
I mean, there's actually, I'm thinking about the animation side of it. Like in the storyboards, there's not usually that much, but that relates to the show. But with animation, there were some funny things where in season 3, I had to animate myself using the character that I had drawn of myself, getting hit by Bojack and Sarah Lynn when they're driving, and I think the episode "That's Too Much Man," the season 3, episode 11,
Mm-hmm.
because there's this part where they're driving and they have like a character get hit by the car, but the overseas studio just kind of like tweened one pose across the screen, and they were like, "Hey, can you like make this more like chaotic and weird?" So if you look at that scene where they're driving and like running into stuff, I think it's just before they hit the guy's mailbox. I flip over the car and my like legs are like twisting backwards and stuff.
I have to look
that
that
was
one
pretty
up.
fun.
That's really funny.
And there's like weird moments like that where they'll ask like for a specific character to be a certain way. Like I had to do that with Jimmy Fallon. They were like, "Hey, in season 3, episode 10, the one where Bojack almost wins the Oscar nomination thing.
Sure.
There's like this cutaway of Jimmy Fallon getting hit by a bus, I think." And the note basically was like, "This animation looks too normal. Can you make him look more like stupid and like manic and like crazy, like hyperactive?" So I had a lot of fun doing that. What else? Oh, okay. This is really early, but in season 1, episode 3, I think the first Sarah Lynn episode, I think they wanted to get Andrew Garfield to play himself, and then he didn't. I think he turned them down, and then at the last minute, they were like, "We need to make him look bad now, so we're gonna have him like constantly posing and like hitting these weird like expressions where he's like wrapping his hands around his face." I think the note was make it look like Egon Schiele poses.
I thought it looked like he was voguing. Like,
Yeah, kind of that too.
Yeah.
But I think maybe this isn't a great thing to say officially publicly, but I think it was just because they asked him and he turned them down. They were like, "Let's make him look bad. Make him look bad."
Some
Can't
of
all
the
be
best things
good
are done out of
sports.
spite.
Can't all be good sports like Zach Braff.
Yeah, Zach Braff was a trooper. Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like he gets killed in the Underground episode I directed, and then doesn't something happen to him again in The View from Halfway Down? He shows up there too, right?
Yeah, he's like the butler in that episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, why exactly am I here?
I was really kind of taken aback by that because it's the butler Zach Braff, and then he starts talking. It's like, oh, that's just Zach Braff.
He showed up to record that when we were like unionizing and like marching outside the studio, and he was on his motorcycle filming it on his phone. He was just like, "This is crazy. I'm gonna film this."
Oh man. So I guess we can kind of segue into probably one of your biggest projects, and what I'm mostly familiar with with you from Sublo and Tangy Mustard is such a odd show. It's an odd but very great show, and I just like want to know how this idea came to you.
I guess there was a few factors. One of them was after I'd done Festive Fish, I really wanted to do something that wasn't like specifically like based on other stuff. Like he's an original character, Festive Fish, but he's very like those cartoons are basically like me imitating a bunch of other ones. And I just kind of wanted to do a thing that was more drawn from real life, which in my case was, me like doing stupid stuff with my friends in my early 20s. And so that was one thing. Another thing was I really missed Toronto because I had moved to LA like a year before that or something. And so I wanted to do something like set there that would give me an excuse to like, just think about Toronto more, I guess, and like visit more and like be looking at like photos and like Google Street View and all that kind of stuff for reference. And then the mascot side of it was I kept trying to think of like weird jobs that characters could have or just some weird thing for them to be doing so that it wasn't like a totally self-indulgent, just like me and my friends are so funny kind of thing, but it was more like some kind of concept. And I live pretty close to Hollywood Boulevard, which is where there's a bunch of people in weird suits dressed up as movie characters.
Right, the ones that like charge for pictures and everything, right?
Yeah, exactly. And there was some of them were like really crappy looking suits. Like there's this Chewbacca costume that's made of like layers of cardboard that are all kind of like peeling off. and there was like a 7-foot tall Elmo from Sesame Street, where he was like wearing lime green pants and his eyes were like looking in different directions and stuff.
Oh,
That I
jeez.
thought was like the funniest, like most terrifying thing. So I wanted to do something with kind of like crappy looking mascot costumes. I thought that was sort of a funny, bad job for the characters to have. And I think initially I wasn't even really gonna like explain why they were in the suits. It was just like, oh, this is their job, but not really talk about it. And then I started thinking, oh no, it could be funny if or it could be a good source of stories if they have like more context for it. If they have like coworkers and a boss and like an established setting that they're always in.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I definitely like the explanation in the first episode. So where their boss is basically like, no, you are never allowed to take these suits off ever because it's your job. And
yeah,
you never see them outside costume in the entire show.
and also I kind of like the not ambiguity, the like uh maybe ambiguity, but you just like you don't know like what their names are or like what they look like or like what their races are or anything. Like it's all kind of vague. So I think it's just easier to identify with stuff when it's not like specific, you know?
Right.
But also at the same time, like I try to make their lives very specific because I feel like the behavior is very relatable. But like, if Sublo looked exactly like Ryan, the guy who plays him, my cousin, I think it would make him like less relatable, Like
Sure.
I mean, that's the whole thing with cartoons in general. It's like I think Scott McCloud talks about that in his like Understanding Comics book that like a super detailed, realistic person, a drawing, you're not necessarily going to empathize as much with as like a smiley face, just because you can project yourself onto like a simpler thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that's part of the reason that like funny animals were such a thing for a long time, like Mickey Mouse and Bugs Bunny, and even like Sonic the Hedgehog is like, you're not seeing like, oh, this is like a mid-30s Portuguese man or something. You're just saying like, oh, this is a rabbit or whatever. So like there's
Sure,
less
sure.
factors for you to be like, this person is different from me.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I actually wanted to ask if it had any sort of basis in like if you had worked in the food industry or worked as like a high school mascot or anything in the past, if that's what might have influenced any of the sort of decisions that came with the setting.
I mean, I've worked boring jobs. I've never worked in the fast food industry or as a mascot, but I've eaten at Subway a lot. And I've had
Right.
friends who worked there and stuff. I've had friends who were like in those kinds of jobs. I don't think I ever knew anybody who was a mascot. I think I read some anecdotes online about it, but I mean, my primary concern with the show is never really about the job. It's always just like a means to an end, like it's always just like about, if it is even about them at Subpar, it's them like hanging out at Subpar doing other stuff. Like they're barely ever actually on the street trying to get people to go in.
You're never going to get into the intricacies of being a sandwich artist.
Yeah. Yeah, because I like to keep the stories more about their lives outside of that,
For sure.
but not get too specific about that, which is hard.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of things that you can't do because they're mascots. Like, you can't show them like. I mean, I've tried sometimes to sort of cheat and show them eating, but it's like Tangy Mustard can kind of stuff stuff in his mouth, but Sublo has to like open his porthole if he wants to put something in his mouth, and I don't want to like show that, so he doesn't eat too much. Even having Sublo sit down is kind of hard because his costume is so bulky.
Right. Does it really
they can't kiss anybody. Like you don't want to see their families at all because then it kind of like tells you like who they are. So there's like kind of a lot of limitations that I didn't think about when I was starting it, but it's not like a big deal.
I'd say you're navigating it pretty well so far.
Yeah, really.
I think limitations can force you to come up with like weirder stuff sometimes too. Not necessarily in my case, but in general, I feel like like the classic example is like like somebody's trying to use like a licensed name brand product on like a show, and because they can't use the actual name, they come up with their own weird version, and then that becomes like part of their show.
Right, or like Subpar.
Yeah, exactly. Like Subpar. I guess I do it too.
Yeah.
No, I sorry, Kyle. Were you trying to say something?
So it's world building. It's great.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about world building in general earlier today because like There's this screenwriter from the 70s and 80s, W.D. Richter, who did Big Trouble in Little China. Have you guys seen that movie?
Oh, I love that
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
Like he didn't direct it; that was John Carpenter, but he wrote it, and he also wrote Buckaroo Banzai. And he wrote this 70s version of Invasion of the Body Snatchers that was really good. And I was thinking about how like the common element in all those, or one of the common elements in all those things, is he puts in all these weird random details to the story that don't really like affect the plot, but they're just like the characters will be like, "Hey, remember that time 2 years ago when we did this thing?" And it just kind of makes the world richer. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
But you also see that in like a lot of bad movies, because that's supposed to be like a thing you don't do in screenwriting, right? Is like put in stuff that doesn't have anything to do with the plot. Like The Room is full of that, of like,
Oh, boy.
characters being like, "Hey, remember that girl who got so beat up so bad she ended up in a hospital on Guerrero Street?" And it's like, why is that in the movie?
What a
But it's like
story, Mark.
memorable, and it like makes it so much richer. Like even though it's not a good movie, like it feels like it exists in its own world, because there's so much of that in the movie.
Mhm.
Aaron, being in LA, have you ever been to a live showing of The Room?
I went to one in Toronto actually, where Tommy Wiseau was there, and
Yeah,
he signed my DVD, and he did like laps around the theater at the beginning.
yeah, he's a fucking nutter, that dude.
He's a weird guy. Yeah.
Yeah, I got to. Yeah, I met him at a showing that they did in LA. It was him and Greg Sestero, and yeah, man, he's a
Greg was
fucking,
there too.
he's a character.
Yeah. I love the book. I didn't really like the movie that much, but I love the book, The Disaster Artist.
Yeah, no, I never got to check out the book myself, but I'd always heard that was really well. I saw the movie that was based on. I enjoyed it,
Mhm.
but I've heard excerpts from the audiobook where like Greg is like doing the Tommy impression, and like it just sounds like dead on. It's like incredible.
He's been like probably spending every day with him for almost like 15 years now or something, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe more? I can't
it's-
remember.
It's so wild that like they're still that close, because like you would think after writing a tell-all about like
Yeah, you'd think Tommy would be mad about that, right?
yeah, but he's not your conventional human, so
Well, they
like,
did that other
I'm
movie
convinced
together recently.
I'm not even convinced he is human.
yeah.
He did that. They did that movie, Best Friends,
Best
and
Fiends,
R.
yeah.
Best. The R is in brackets or whatever.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it yet, but somebody said it was pretty good.
Yeah, because
think
it's
it's a
not
good
actually
part.
Tommy directing it, right? I think it's just Tommy and Greg are in the movie, but they didn't actually write it or like have
Yeah,
any
which
input on
is interesting. I'm surprised they agreed to that.
yeah. Well, because I think the only other thing that I know that Tommy was in was they did the sequel to Samurai Cop, and he was like a villain in that.
Oh, that's right. I never saw that. I saw the first Samurai Cop. I
I
love
had
that
only
movie.
I'd seen the excerpts of it that they'd done on a Red Letter Media, like on half or not Half in the Bag, but one of the other
I
shows they
love
do.
Red Letter Media. Yeah, Best of the Worst or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they talk about it a
I
bit
love
there.
those guys.
No, they're great.
I swear I remember him. I can't remember if it was on Hulu or what. I remember he had like a weird workplace comedy show that he made.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah, Neighbors.
yeah, Neighbors.
Yeah, that.
I only ever saw the trailer for it, but I heard it was
Yeah,
like
same here.
unwatchable.
I tried to watch the first episode and it was so bad. I couldn't get through it.
I'd seen this short that he was in, The House That Drips Blood on Alex.
Oh yeah, I saw that too years ago. I forget everything about it.
Because that was like the first thing that came out like after the sort of the sudden boom of popularity in The Room, and it just like it is what it is. The title gives you all that you need to know.
And he had that weird like video game review show where he was like,
Yeah.
"Hey guys, it's TW. I'm on the moon."
I wish there was more episodes of that. It was so entertaining.
He was so bad at all the games, wasn't he? From what I remember.
Yeah. No, because God, it would do so well now. Because I mean, now you got like all these other celebrities that are just like like that didn't start on YouTube, but are just like, we got Will Smith on YouTube, and then you got Jack Black, who's
That's
like
so
Jablinski
weird that-
Games. Like
that
he's
Will
got
Smith
his
is
own.
on YouTube.
It's so weird.
I don't like that he's on YouTube.
Yeah, because I think there's definitely a stigma there, like people that didn't like carve out their sort of their career on a platform, and then somebody else like in Hollywood just sort of like hopping on and like stealing, or not, not to say that they're stealing.
Why is he on there? It's like the whole point of that stuff is that you're supposed. Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm not that into much YouTuber stuff, but like the idea is that it's like authentic, right? But Will Smith is like the least authentic guy ever. Like everything he does is like so rehearsed.
Yeah.
He's such, I don't know. I mean, he just seems like he's at this point, maybe not so much when he was younger, but at this point, it seems so much like he's like acting like a normal person, but it's all an act, you know?
I think, yeah, just when you're in Hollywood that long, it's probably hard to come off as like relatable, just because you've spent most
Right.
of your
It's like a
life.
relatable act now, it feels like.
Yeah, exactly.
I
And I,
remember there's this really funny thing of Jim Carrey in the mid 90s where he was like joking about now that he was famous, he laughs differently. Like he used to laugh like, ha 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 ha. And then now he laughs like, oh, ha ha, that's beautiful. And he's like clapping and slapping his leg and basically imitating Tom Cruise.
yeah,
It was really good. I mean, I'm not doing it justice. Obviously, I'm not like a performer, but it's pretty good. Just
yeah,
Jim
yeah.
Carrey like explaining how rich people laugh.
Right.
Although speaking of like rehearse and everything else, like because I know Sublo, like a lot of the dialogue and stuff doesn't really come across necessarily as like ad libbed. Like because I know you write scripts and like I've seen they do like a lot of different takes like from the videos I've seen on YouTube of the voice actors doing the work and everything. But I mean
Yeah,
like
yeah.
when you're in the booth and like you're sort of plotting out all this the voices and stuff. I mean, is there like has there been stuff that's shown up in Sublo that's sort of come like as like off the cuff sort of reactions, or is it
Oh yeah,
mostly
yeah.
stick to?
There's been like ad libs that go in. It's usually like just like a slight variation on what's in the script. Like a lot of the time, Kevin, who plays Tangy Mustard, I mean, I kind of already write the lines, like picturing how he might say them, or they're like based on the kinds of things that he says. But sometimes he'll like change a word or two, and a lot of those times those like wind up in the outtakes videos.
Sure,
Um,
sure.
but like, or in the scenes where like Katie is supposed to be drunk, like Heather was just kind of like getting into the mindset, and she started like mispronouncing certain things, and we were like, "Oh, it's funny. Like, let's leave that in."
Drunk Katie's the best.
Yeah, I'm looking for excuses to like have Katie be drunk without it being too sad and like
I know.
depressing.
That was some
But
of my favorite
she
stuff
does
from.
really funny performances, and it's like really fun to animate her like moving around all crazy and stuff.
I wanted to say that was some of my favorite stuff from Festive Fish was it Blotty? Like,
Yeah, his girlfriend.
yeah, like you definitely have a talent for animating drunk people.
Thanks. I had a good time when in like the art show episode, Sublo and Tangy Mustard are drunk too, and they're kind of like a
Yeah.
little more loosey goosey there.
Yeah.
It's fun animating characters drunk, but like it's I don't want them to all just be like drunk all the time. Maybe I should just animate them like that anyway. I don't know.
Right. I think
It
maybe you
might-
start dipping more into like are you familiar with the Small Butera?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I love their stuff. Yeah.
I think like you would start maybe like sort of going into that sort of territory because it seems like a lot of
Right.
the way that movements.
Stumbling and stuff.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of that with Festive Fish. I mean, he was always kind of supposed to be drunk too, but like in the first Festive Fish cartoon, he's like walking to the door and he just kind of like stumbles and he doesn't like comment on it or anything.
There's okay. Actually, before I forget, there was a bit that made me actually laugh out loud, like really hard in Fester Fish was the bit where it's his nephew and like he's throwing him outside of the door like over and over and it starts speeding up and like he takes a break for like 5 seconds, takes a breather, and then he goes right back to it. But then like there's the bit where his nephew's outside and inside and like he picks him up and then like he's looking at both of them and they sort of like fuse back together. Like
Yeah, that's I mean that whole part where he's like keeps putting him outside and he's back again obviously is like very just kind of like ripping off Tex Avery cartoons. I think he did like at least 4 or 5 that had that premise of like Droopy being everywhere when the wolf is trying to escape him. But then that was basically just came from me being like, oh, like what would I do in that situation? Like I'd grab one of them and then look on the other side.
Yeah. And as far as other visual gags, I really enjoyed from Sublo. There's the episode where they're at the party, and what was it? The ex-boyfriend like takes the solo cup and like smashes it, and like
oh yeah, Marvin.
yeah,
yeah. I think that was just like a lot of things that I put in. If they're not like directly from life, they're just like weird, random joke things that I had like thought of years earlier and just been kind of waiting for an excuse to do them.
right.
Yeah.
That was just a thing that at some point I thought like it would be funny if a character cracks a plastic cup as if it was like a glass bottle in like a bar fight.
Yeah.
So I just want to give like a lot of credit to you for the animation style that you have. I think part of a lot of the charm of Sublo and Tangy Mustard comes from like it you like the art, the animation, the art style is a little on the rough side, but I honestly think that's part of its charm.
Thanks.
It just feels very, a lot of the show, I guess I would just I would describe as natural. Like the animation style, the way the characters talk to each other. I know that you like script things and like obviously some ad lib stuff gets in there, but I just love the dialogue between all these characters because it just feels like just a bunch of dudes just hanging out, and just the dialogue feels very natural, but also very funny.
Well, that's great. Yeah, that's basically exactly what I'm going for. Yeah, like even more than like my goal a lot of the time isn't even necessarily to like tell like a full story or something. It's just like a fun little scene that kind of feels like natural and believable. And there's a lot of little things that I kind of do to try and do that. Like like you said, like maybe the dialogue is a little, even though it's mostly scripted, it's like kind of written in a way that feels organic, but also like part of it I think too is like not having a bunch of crazy big like takes and smears and stuff, like I would do more in Festive Fish. Like I like the kind of like awkwardness of like if a character has to go open this door, like you have to watch them go over and open it in something that feels at least like real time, even if like the steps are a little too big really and they're like kind of breaking perspective. Because I don't know, I just find that so entertaining, just like part of the illusion of like characters seeming real. Like I love being able to like be like, okay, like I started with literally nothing on the screen and then now I've got this scene with these characters that when you watch it feels like they're real. Peanuts specials like from the 60s and 70s were really good at that too. Like although sometimes they're a little too slow, I guess. Like it's hard to watch some of them, but I always appreciate like just how they wouldn't just have like a character zip in with whatever they need. They'd have like a character like kind of slowly walk on screen and like take out the thing that they need and then reach over to this other thing and put them together. I think that was like a bit of an influence there, maybe. Just the almost like boring naturalism.
Sure. And kind of to that point, I've really enjoyed. I started putting a couple episodes on over the last couple of days, just kind of to freshen up on this stuff. It's been really kind of interesting watching these as the episodes progress. I really think like the relationships you've built, especially between like Sublo, Tangy Mustard, and Katie, I've really enjoyed watching like their almost reluctant friendship kind of growing over time. Because I'm juxtaposing the episode where they glue Katie's head to the counter and they're just being dicks, and she's like starts crying because she's like she doesn't want to work here. She really wants to be a professional artist, and they're always being assholes to her. And put that against like the most recent episode where Katie's drunk off her ass and they carry her all the way home. It's very sweet to see like that they're like at this point in their relationship where they really care about each other, and like obviously they're going to help them out, even though they are kind of reluctant at first to like walk her all the way home.
At the beginning
they
of that,
do it.
Like, wait, couldn't like one of her better friends do it? And she's like, no, I'm going off with Mandrell, of course.
They go fuck in a bush. And I like that they just keep popping up periodically. But no, just like these characters are great, and I've just loved seeing them evolve over the episodes.
Thanks. That's great. That's like, maybe again, like one of the biggest things I'm going for with it is just kind of like I thought it'd be cool to gradually show the characters' dynamics and relationships kind of change a little bit over time. And like, in that episode, they say like, we're more than friends, we're her coworkers. And I just find that to be true a lot of the time, like obviously you like maintain your friends from other places and stuff too, but like the people that you spend like so much of your day with, you just kind of wind up bonding with, whether you like it or not. it's not necessarily people who you're like, these people are cool, like I'm gonna be good friends with them. But then you're like, oh, like 6 months later, I guess we are good friends now.
You just spend so
Or
much
we hate
like
each other's guts. I don't know. Usually, in my experience, you become
you
friends
just
with them.
you just kind of spend so much time in close quarters with these people that you just eventually knowing way too much about that person, like more than you would divulge to any normal person.
Right? Yeah.
And that
Like
just
you
kind of
can't help
bonds
but
you that
know
way.
TMI with like the coworkers. You're just like, oh, I
Right.
heard this thing about like their relationship or something. Like, yeah, you wind up knowing them better than like the people they would probably say are their best friends, just because
Right.
you're talking to them like 8 hours a day instead of like
Just inadvertently, you just learn everything about them, whether
yeah,
you
and
want to or
you
not.
just kind of get more empathy towards them and stuff.
For
And
sure.
also, like a thing I wanted to kind of gradually do in the show is how like Sublo and Tangy Mustard seem like at first they seem like the weirdest ones. Like they're like these kind of awkward, nerdy, like loser guys. But then I wanted to kind of gradually reveal that like everybody is like as they get to know everybody else, they're also all kind of weird.
Yeah.
Because that's just another thing that I find in life is that like even the people you think are like the most normal, the more you get to know them, you're like, oh, they've got this weird quirk, or they're like their like home life isn't great, or there's just like
Mhm.
nobody's as normal as they seem at first.
I,
So
I I honestly think Woo Bomber is probably the only person who's like upfront about how weird he is,
right, yeah, he's the other one who's like obviously very weird.
and I love him.
I
He's
kind of
my
want to
fa-
explore more of him in the next few episodes. I kind of gave him short shrift in this second batch of episodes. He doesn't appear that much, but yeah, it'd be fun to do more with him. I was thinking of having like okay, I won't say anything about. Well, it doesn't matter. I'm not like under NDA. Yeah, I was thinking of having him reveal that like he has like a son named Dick Woobomber Part Two, who he makes Sublo and Tangy Mustard like look after. But I don't. I think I've had that idea for a while, and I don't know if it's gonna make it into an episode. But I just thought that'd be funny if he had a son named Part Two.
Too.
So I did want to ask about that. It was, do you have kind of like an end game or like an end goal for Sublo and Tangy Mustard? Like, do you know kind of like all the, because you can kind of see the story progressing as it were, like as it get more familiar and they make callbacks to other older episodes and stuff. If you kind of know exactly where you want the show to end up, or if you're just kind of just writing it like.
Well, I definitely want to have like continuity, which I guess wasn't clear in the earlier episodes because I remember when the art show episode came out, people were suddenly like, "Whoa, they're like referencing past episodes. What's going on?" And I was like, "Yeah, they all are supposed to have happened in the same continuity." I didn't realize that was like surprising, but yeah, I definitely want to like keep kind of like developing their lives and their relationships with each other. But I don't necessarily, and maybe not always in like positive ways. Like maybe some of them kind of drift apart. Like I was kind of in my mind, like in the most recent episode, you can kind of maybe see like Katie and her roommate Ashley not being as close friends as they maybe were in the past.
Mhm.
So maybe stuff kind of like that, or between Sublo and Tito. Like I was thinking maybe Tito and Sublo won't keep living together because Tito's like hard to live with, I guess.
Tito's an interesting man.
But I don't have like a specific like final conclusion thing that I've got planned out. Like I have ideas for things that I want to do in the future that I kind of have put off because I didn't want to do them too early.
Sure.
But I don't have any like final episode planned necessarily. I mean, I kind of did, and it was that picnic one. Like at one point, I was like, "Well, if I don't," okay. So basically, with the first batch of episodes, the first like season, I had written the convention episode as like the end of that, and I was like, "Okay, that could be like an end point if I just do a few episodes." But then I moved that one until later in the second season, and so it wasn't really any conclusion. But the picnic one, yeah, was gonna maybe be like another kind of potential stopping point where I'm like, okay, well, this is another nice note to end on, maybe if I don't want to do more.
Sure.
But I do want to do more, so I got to figure out a third potential stopping point.
Yeah, so actually that was because you brought up the convention episode. That was actually part of the reason why I asked, because you have the video on your YouTube of the first recording session for Sublo and Tangy Mustard, and
Yeah,
there's bits in there from the convention episode, and like I saw that didn't come until much later, so I was wondering how how far ahead you had stuff planned, like as you were doing it.
I wrote 6 episodes initially. There was the first 2, which are the first 2, and then I had a third episode that I didn't end up making. We recorded it, and then I started storyboarding it, and I was like, this isn't really that funny. And it's like a complicated story. But that one got like just taken out, and what was going to be the 4th episode was the one where they put up the parrot and the submarine poster.
Right.
And then there was going to be the Katie's birthday episode, and then the convention episode. And then the script that I had written at that point for the convention one, it was like maybe 60 or 70% the same as the final one, but I wasn't happy with it, and there was things that I wanted to add or redo. So I figured I can move it till like later in the series.
Gotcha.
And I kind of like approached the idea of like the second season almost like an album, where I wanted I wanted there to be ones that are more like standout kind of like singles, and ones that maybe it's not as important that they work outside the context of the series, like something like the episode 10 where they're just like screwing around on the sidewalk, the battlefield one that's like 30 seconds long, like that. If that was like on an album, that would be like a filler track sort of. But I just figured like it's stuff like that where it kind of like makes the whole series richer to have those smaller moments, but they don't necessarily like, that's not like something you'd hold up as like one of the best ones or anything.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm kind of okay with that.
And I'll even say, even what I guess what you consider filler episodes, are still entertaining. Like I was just rewatching it's one of the shorter ones where they're in line to get a sandwich.
Oh yeah, Sublo
and someone wants to go take a phone call for a second. Tangy Mustard comes back with a salad.
Yeah, so I just figured stupid little vignettes like that would kind of add like some more depth to the characters' relationships and like flesh out the world and stuff. And like I said, I just kind of like I figured like if you watch like all the episodes, then you're like, okay, they like it's a little richer for having those smaller ones in there, hopefully.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially because the idea that I had was like I could either basically do, I don't know, 5 bigger episodes, or I forget how many exactly, or like 5 bigger episodes and a few smaller ones, Like I didn't want to do a lot of big episodes, but I was like, I could do a few shorter ones as like breaks in between to kind of like hopefully catch up with the schedule. And then that didn't happen. I was going to try and do all those episodes in a year and put one out like one a month. That went away pretty quick. I think I was able to do that for maybe 2 months.
So I guess kind of talking about that, like, what is a typical like production schedule to like get an episode of this put out?
So like I said, I recorded them all kind of as like one season episodes. Well, I recorded the first 4 episodes, and then episodes 5 to 15 as another season. So I wrote and recorded those all together and storyboarded like the first half all together at like the same time. And I'd say usually probably like on average like 2 or 3 months for an episode, less if it's like a shorter one and a little more if it's longer. But that's usually about the amount of time it takes for the animation and backgrounds and maybe storyboards too.
Gotcha.
With the like one of the 2 fastest episodes, I think. Well, obviously that really short one where they're just like on the sidewalk throwing stuff at each other. But I think the 2 like bigger episodes that went really quick were episode 6, where Sublo tries to become more of like a real submarine, and Tito's girlfriend, episode 14. Those ones both I think took like maybe 2 weeks each in total for the animation, which is pretty quick. I wish I could do them all that fast, but I just usually there's some other distraction or some work going on or something.
Yeah.
Right.
Is there any joke that you're like completely proud of that you think is the funniest thing you've done?
It's usually like a visual thing, I think. The ones that like always make me laugh, because with like a verbal joke, like you get the idea of it, and then you're like, yeah, I've heard that. Like the novelty of it wears off. But stuff like like the shot of Tangy Mustard dancing in the party in episode 4 is not a joke, but like I laugh at it every time I see it. And like Sublo in the art show episode where he's like, how could we possibly embarrass you? And then he just like leans on nothing. And falls down.
Yeah.
That always kind of makes me laugh. I'd say, yeah, the physical stuff kind of like is more viscerally funny. So maybe I'll try and put a little more slapstick in the next few episodes.
I gotta say, some of the funniest stuff for me is just all the random dances that they do. I think the way you animate, they're like just goofy ass dances.
I love animating dances like that. Well, like goofy dances like that. Actual dances are
Like-
really hard.
Yeah.
Like sometimes. Oh, sorry. What were you gonna say?
So I was just gonna say, like, I especially like the episode where they have to go dance battle the other mascots.
Yeah.
Just like
There's a
they
lot
had
of
to
good
like
stuff.
animate 4 different characters doing just like different dances.
That was pretty fun. Yeah, but one of the hardest dances I've animated was that little bit where Chick is breakdancing in that one.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Right.
I wanted it to look like real breakdancing. Like when I'm just animating like Sublo and Tangy Mustard dancing or like Tuca and Birdie dancing, like it just is like whatever funny poses I want. But then occasionally, like either for that episode of Sublo and Tangy Mustard or like on Tuca and Birdie, they'll be like, oh, could you have them doing this specific dance? And that's so hard for me to like actually match a proper dance. And like
Right.
analyze the breakdowns of like, okay, what is this arm doing here? Like, is it bending this way, but like the other arm is doing something different? It's just hard to analyze the movement like that. A lot of my animation is more like intuitive and just kind of like, I don't know. I hope this feels right. This looks like a good pose,
Yeah.
and less about like, can the body realistically move that way?
Yeah, for sure. Kyle, I feel bad. I feel like I keep talking over you. Was there anything you wanted to ask about?
Oh, you sure? No, I was gonna say two of my favorite jokes. They're just kind of dumb things, but
Which ones?
I really like the pot shot at the CalArt style or whatever.
Yeah.
That one's
I'm
really
not a
great.
big fan of that whole style. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I don't know if it was intentional or not, but it's the Halloween one where the ghost is messing around with a woo bomber. She makes him do the worm, and then he's in blood. It's just so funny to me.
Oh, the part where Tangy Mustard's like, his name tag is bleeding.
It's just so funny to me. And then no one's
Thanks.
brought it up yet, but Night Shift Charlie is so funny.
Oh yeah, I should have mentioned him too. Yeah, he's like one of the things that always makes me laugh really hard. Like I would never get sick of him.
Yeah.
My friend Moses does the voice of that character, and it's just so weird. It's so bizarre. He kind of goes method for it. I think he like drops his IQ to play that character somehow.
So you did bring up, since we're on the topic of voice actors, you brought up the fact that was a Sublo's voice actor that you're cousins.
Yeah, Ryan Long. Yeah, he's a comedian and he's also he's I guess acted and stuff too. Yeah,
Right.
Such as
So
Sublo and Tangy Mustard.
Right. So like a lot, basically, your relationship with everyone is like everyone that does voice acting on the show, like people that you already knew and were familiar with, like.
Yeah, I think so. Kevin, who plays Tangy Mustard, is one of my best friends from high school. Shannon, who plays Katie's friend Ashley, is also part of that same friend group from high school. Heather, who's Katie, I worked with her, I don't know, like a decade ago now. But we sat next to each other at work for a couple of years. I just kind of thought she'd be good for Katie because she expressed interest in doing cartoon voices and was like also always kind of like making fun of our coworkers.
Right.
I was like, oh, she's like perfect for this role. Moses, who plays Night Shift Charlie, and Felicia, who plays Vanessa, and a few other voices, and Josh, who plays Marvin in that party episode. They're all just like friends from work, you know.
Seems appropriate, honestly.
Yeah, I guess it fits the theme of the show. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I imagine like doing voice direction, like when you're there in the booth and you're able to sort of, it's definitely more a personal relationship, so you're able to sort of direct a lot better. Because I imagine it's
Yeah,
really
yeah.
awkward, like when you're doing stuff professionally, like working with people that you've never met and stuff. Like probably is definitely a bit of difficulty there. So
Well, I've
working with people
done both. In Sublo and Tangy Mustard, I cast this guy Jesse Brown, who hosts my favorite Canadian podcast, Canada Land. And I was a big fan of his show, but I'd never met him. But he agreed to do the voice for Mandrell in the picnic episode, and so he invited me to come record him at his studio, and so that was like intimidating because I was like such a big fan of his work, but I'd never met him. But I'd also done it on Trip Tank a lot of the time. They'd bring in these like celebrities or like big comedians whose work I was like a big fan of, and I had to tell them like how to read the lines. So I had some practice with it, but
Okay.
it is definitely easier when you have like a kind of common language and it's just like a friend of yours or something.
Yeah, like it's definitely fun watching those videos where you're directing like a Tangy Mustard's voice actor, and like because you guys have been like childhood friends, and so there's definitely like a lot of that banter there that just only comes from people that's relationship are that close. Like,
Yeah, exactly. Well, especially with him, like because Tangy Mustard's supposed to be him, basically.
right,
I can be like, "Hey, remember this time when we did this thing? Like, this is supposed to be like that, or something."
right.
So he really, it helps just the character work that he's so kind of like natural as that role. And I think initially he was like a little not like reluctant, like he was excited to do it, but it took a while for us to like click into like figuring out like the voice, not the voice, but like the performance. Uh, I think it was almost like I've heard Kevin Smith talk about like when he created like Jay and Silent Bob, he just wrote a
Yeah,
bunch of stuff that Jason Mewes actually said for him to say as Jay, but then he would read it and be like, how do I say this? Like, what is this word? And he'd be like, this is the thing you said 20 minutes ago. There's a little bit of that with like Tangy Mustard in the beginning. Kevin was kind of like, what do you want me to say here? And I was like, oh, you always say that. And he's like, oh yeah, okay.
I think my favorite Kevin Smith story in that regard was how he wrote all the best stuff for Randall because he thought that he was going to play Randall, and then like
Oh, I didn't know that.
and then he ended up getting Jeff Anderson to play Randall. He went to play Silent Bob, so that's the reason why that Randall's the character as he is because Kevin Smith originally
He
wrote
thought
that.
that's really funny. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Randall's awesome. I love the dance that he does. The
Oh yeah.
weird, like...
Here comes Randall. He's a berserker.
I gotta watch Clerks again. It's been a long time.
It's been a bit. Yeah, I would love to rewatch all that View Askew, like the earlier stuff. I haven't checked out any of his newer stuff. I've been a little afraid too since he started like hitting the weed really heavily. It seems like he might have.
Yeah.
Seems like Seth Rogen might have ruined him a bit.
Yeah. I was listening to his podcast, Smodcast. Like I don't know when it started. Almost like they had only done like 40 episodes or something.
Yeah.
And then like there was definitely a point where he started smoking a lot of weed, and you could like feel it change a little bit.
Yeah.
And he kept kind of like making statements about how he was like done with the industry and he was never going to do another movie or something. And then he got these ideas to do the like Tusk and what was the other one? Yoga Hosers.
Yeah.
They're still. I don't think they made Moose Jaws yet, but that was another one that was.
Whoa.
Yeah, I think the last really good one that I can remember he did was Red State was like definitely a surprise.
I've still not seen Red State. I guess the most recent one I saw was Zach and Miri Make a Porno.
Zach and Miri was probably like the last like good comedy one that he did for sure. Like
was Cop Out after that?
Cop Out was after that, if I remember right. But the thing is, because he didn't even write that one, he just directed it.
That one I was a little apprehensive about. I didn't end up seeing it.
Yeah, same here.
And it sounds like he wasn't happy with it. Like later on, he was like, "Yeah, Bruce Willis was a huge dick to me making that movie."
Yeah.
I think the first one I saw was Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. I was in like grade 6 or something.
Oh my god!
A friend of mine was having a birthday party, and we rented it. But for some reason, his parents were okay with it.
Oh my god!
And I didn't even know there were characters from another movie, even though it was called Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. and the whole point is like, they're like, it's like a continuation of the like Blunt Man and Chronic stuff from Chasing Amy, but I was just like, I guess this is just a weird standalone movie.
Honestly, I think I'm in the same camp as you, Aaron. I think I might have seen that first, and having no context for any of it.
I mean, it still made me laugh though.
Yeah,
I think especially with that one, like grade 6 is a good age to watch it.
Oh, definitely.
I remember describing the Scooby-Doo scene to my dad like a week later. We were like walking our dog or something, and I was like, "Oh, there was this scene where like it was the Scooby-Doo characters, but they were like cutting out their organs or something." And he was like, "This sounds like a weird movie. Like, you sure you should be watching this?"
So I guess Kyle and Matt, do you have anything else you want to ask Aaron here?
Kyle?
I think I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we've definitely gone on like as many tangents as we have actually talking about your careers. So.
Oh yeah, that's fine. I like talking about other stuff more probably. It's hard talking about your own work.
For sure, yeah. There's definitely, I think a lot of people definitely have trouble sort of. I think maybe talking with other people about their body of work, because you're just kind of sitting there while we like feed you compliments, and it's like,
Well, I don't want to be like pretentious about it, like it's more fun for me to like talk about other stuff I like, I think.
Sure,
but
sure.
I mean, I don't know. I had a good time here.
Nice. Oh, we're glad.
Sorry, I went on so many tangents.
We're very happy that you were able to come on, Aaron. Before we go, is there anything you'd like to plug? Anything you'd like our audience to maybe check out of yours?
Well, I'm going to be doing that Sublo and Tangy Mustard soundtrack pretty soon. I'll post like most of the tracks on YouTube, but most of the ones that people actually like would want. And then I'm also posting like a really thorough, like complete soundtrack on probably like on Bandcamp or something. And for my patrons on Patreon.
Right.
And then I'm also going to be doing more episodes sometime soon, hopefully. I don't know when. Mm-hmm. But then also not soon, Tuca and Birdie Season 2, Adult Swim 2021.
Looking forward to it.
I directed the first one.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
But I'd say just Sublo and Tangy Mustard in general. If you haven't already watched all of it, check it out.
Yeah, guys, go check it out. It's a really funny show. It's really well done. I think.
Yeah,
I think
like just a little less than an hour.
I think you'll have a good time with it.
Yeah, you're gonna love it. Check it out.
Well, Aaron, thank you so much again for being here. It has been an amazing pleasure to talk with you, and talk about everything and all that stuff and your career. You've just been great. So thank you again for doing this.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Guys, make sure you check out Aaron's stuff. I'll put a link to his YouTube page in the show notes. Speaking of those notes, if you'd like to talk about this episode or any other episodes, you can find us on our Facebook, our Twitter, on our Discord. All the links are in the show notes for that. And we are available on pretty much every streaming platform out there. Expect to take us on the go. But with that said, that's all we got for this week. Be sure to check back next week for something else. Until then, be safe, and we'll see you all again next week.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to the Ink and Paint Club podcast. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter to keep up with the show. Join our Discord to chat with us. Links are in the description. We'll see you next time.